The story begins with a regular day at Hidako Masamune's high school. Well, a regular day for him at least. As usual, everyone sits or walks in pairs, leaving Hidako alone. The only time he's talked to is when he's the subject of bullying and caricature by his mates. This time, Saeki Kenta and his accomplice, two people who frequently bully Hidako, approach the young man for what is likely another dose of bullying. They throw their coins at Hidako and order him to get them juice. Hidako at this point is used to being treated as an errand boy. He feels like he is cursed with the personality of a slave. Just to get things over with, Hidako is ready to do as his bullies say. But then, Kawachi comes up from behind and confronts the bullies, asking why they always choose to pick on Hidako. She insists that at high school, the likes of Saeki should have outgrown their bullying phase. Saeki denies bullying Hidako, saying he just wants the kid to get him some juice like any friend would. Kawachi doesn't buy their excuse, so she looks to see whether Hidako is okay with being their errand boy. Whether it's for fear of the bullies or his desire to be accepted by others, Hidako feigns a smile and insists that the boys are doing nothing wrong and that Kawachi must let it go. Hidako has been the subject of bullying all his life, and he can tell that four parties contribute to the bullying process: the bystanders, the supporters, the bullies, and the victims. Everyone likes to think that they're not involved, but in the end, it's a whole process and they each play their roles to a high degree of excellence. Hidako Masamune takes a walk upstairs, to the top of the school building. I don't think that's where the juice is sold, Hidako. On his way up, he moans to himself about how he's broken. When he gets to the top of the building, he tells himself that not him, but the world he lives in is broken, and that he can't keep staying in such a terrible world. It's a long way to go, but Hidako doesn't feel as much fear as he feels rejection. He lets himself fall. On his way down, he thinks about how he doesn't necessarily wish for death. He just can't bear to live anymore. And that's thanks to everyone who made life miserable for him. Oh well, it'll soon be over now. Hidako closes his eyes and steadies himself for death's cold embrace. On this day, Hidako Masamune died. Or did he? Hidako starts to hear different voices around him, so he has to open his eyes. This must be what the afterlife looks like. He looks around and sees a man on a throne, one whom he assumes to be the king. The king has some officials around him who keep expressing their happiness at succeeding. Okay, but what did they succeed in doing? The king joyfully welcomes the heroes to his world, which makes Hidako look around and notice that all his classmates are there. He doesn't understand how he went from falling from the building to being in a strange place with all his classmates. The king introduces himself as Johannes Greyberg, the 47th king of the country of Greyberg. He understands that all his newly summoned heroes would be confused as to why they're here, so he offers some explanation. According to him, his kingdom, Greyberg, has been locked in a war against magical entities for a long time, and the war doesn't look like it's stopping anytime soon. In their desperation, they turn to hero summoning to see if the heroes would break the deadlock and end the battle. According to the knowledge passed on to them, the heroes summoned will have great skills and statuses. At this point, Saeki can't stop himself from speaking back to the king. He questions the king's intentions and boldly declares that they were kidnapped by the king. His speech is cut short by a blast from the king, who tries to demonstrate what magic looks like to the heroes. The king apologizes, saying he thought that a demonstration would be a more effective way to explain. This latest demonstration from the king gets Saeki in an even angrier mood. He almost steps out to physically confront the king, but someone pulls him back and tells him to stand down. Hidako points out that the king has a lot of guards around, so they can't pick a fight with him at this moment. Saeki doesn't even listen to him, but he calms down when a few other classmates share a similar opinion. King Johannes assures the heroes that there is no foul intentions towards them. Summoning them was a difficult task. Killing the heroes they worked so hard to summon wouldn't make any sense. The king continues to address the class. He informs them that they each received an extraordinary power and occupation, and they can access their stats by just saying status. The ones that have the hero occupation are especially gifted. Saeki is the first to call out his status window. His occupation is Sage and his title is Hero. A Sage is ranked with the top class of knights. They possess the priest attributes as well. The next one to call out his stats is Ichijo Yukimura. The young man's occupation is Hero, and his title also says Hero. One by one, all members of the class check their status and are pleased with what they see. Hidako thinks about how these people get to enjoy better lives, despite already having good lives before now. He decides to check his stats and see if he's a favored one in this world. Hidako accesses his status window and sees that his occupation is Healer, and unlike the rest, his title says Reincarnated. Nobody else has the healer occupation, so he asks one of the officials, Ares, to know what the occupation is about. Ares tells him without mincing words that Healer is a recovery occupation, the weakest among the class of heroes. Hidako is devastated, and it doesn't help that Saeki comes over to taunt him. Another official asks Hidako why his title says Reincarnated instead of Heroes. Hidako reveals that he jumped off the roof just before they were summoned. The official doesn't do anything but leaves with a face that questions his intentions. Aries addresses the new class of heroes. According to her, they'll be enrolled in a training academy for some time, so they can get strong enough to battle the magical entities. She instructs the class to step into a magic circle that will transport them to their student dormitories. Saiki refuses to let it go, as he continues to taunt Hideko with his weak class, also referring to him as a suicidal dirtbag. Hideko can't bear it anymore. He thinks about how his life at home isn't so different from the life he's going to live in this new world. He doesn't want to be around people like Saiki anymore. Hideko announces that he doesn't intend to go with them. Everyone is stunned by his decision. Aries then reveals that from the moment they realized he had a weak occupation, she'd planned to transport him to a different location. The new location would be random, and he could end up anywhere. Not even they would be able to predict where he ends up. Aries accuses Hideko of being the drawback among the heroes summoned to save the lives of her people, saying that he has committed the sin of wasting their time and effort. Before Aries sends Hideko out through the circle, the young man cries out, vowing to destroy the entire country and every one of them, bringing it down to the ground. That's big talk for someone who's probably about to die. With this, she sends Hideko through the circle and into what she believes is inevitable death. A little while later, Hideko finds himself in a very dark place. He feels tired and feels like he has walked for a long time. He then remembers what led to this place, being the weakest and being disposed of. Hideko checks his stats again and sees something interesting. He has a level 1 Otherworld Obsession Syndrome. Otherworld Obsession Syndrome is a disorder which one who has longed for another world suffers from. After walking on for what seems like forever, with his wooden torch in hand, Hideko Masamune finally stumbles on 3 boxes. His best guess is that they are treasure boxes, but Hideko is well aware that they could be mimics that have dangerous things in them. However, he's treaded on a path so dangerously close to death recently, so he decides to open the boxes anyway. 3 boxes in the middle of nowhere? What could possibly go wrong? He opens the first box carefully, but he's disappointed to see that it's empty. He decides to open everything up. When he opens up the second box, he sees a small bottle containing what looks like a potion inside. He keenly observes the bottle for a while, wondering whether its contents could be poison. Suddenly, out of nowhere, he hears a voice that instructs him to drink the potion. Hideko gets chills all over and tries to locate where the voice is from. The voice doesn't stop. It instructs him to drink the potion until the last drop, only if he truly wants more power. At first, Hideko feels like he's just imagining things, but then he thinks about all that he's gone through while getting to that moment. He doesn't want to live the kind of life he previously lived, and since the world gave him another chance after he jumped, Hideko decides that drinking the potion is worth the risk. He opens the bottle and gulps down all its contents. In a short while, everything gets dark again as Hideko blacks out. Meanwhile, the rest of the class has been transported to their new school, the Kingdom of Greyberg's National Academy, owned by Aries Greyberg. The students look like they are well settled in and are now looking forward to their training. Saiki Kenta cannot stop talking about the beauty of Aries. Kawachi is less interested in that discussion, saying that while she's undoubtedly pretty, she has a dangerous air around her and can't be trusted. Saiki laughs it off and compares Aries to a rose that comes with its thorns. Kawachi insists that Saiki should be careful around Aries, making sure not to fall too deep and be disposed of. That's when Saiki brings up the sensitive topic, Hideko. Everyone around scolds him for speaking about Hideko in that manner, but he laughs it off and calls them soft. After a while, the students present there start arguing about Hideko and who bears the responsibility for what was surely his death. Saiki dismisses everyone, saying that Hideko is gone for good, and no matter what they do or who they blame, it won't bring him back. Hideko wakes up after being passed out for a while. He feels pain all over his body, which is probably a result of passing out on the hard floor. He notices that his vision is much better now and that he doesn't need his wooden torch to see anymore. He wonders whether the improved vision is all that he got from drinking the potion. So much for getting more power. Hideko looks to his left and notices that there's a third chest he's yet to open. As his expectations are already down from the first 2 boxes, he decides to open the third one and just get it over with. Unfortunately for him, the third box turns out to be a mimic. It's a dangerous creature with a long tongue and very dangerous teeth, trapped inside the box. The creature goes after Hideko, who isn't fast enough to evade the attack in time. It bites off a portion of Hideko's left hand. If he hadn't run away, the creature might have done a lot more damage. Hideko escapes from that room and into another to heal himself. He might be a healer, but he remembers that he's still the weakest class that exists. He wonders how he's supposed to win or even survive such a terrifying monster. While checking his stats on the status window, Hideko sees something that is completely new. It's a new skill. He now has a unique skill, Mischievous Reversal, Advanced, a skill he attained by drinking from the God of Revenge's secret potion. The effect of Advanced Mischievous Reversal can apply to any target or can be cancelled. In the case of using the reverse on status, plus will turn to minus. If used on a life effect, it will turn to death. While still assessing the skill, Hideko hears a voice that tells him to activate the God of Revenge's mischief, and also mischievous reversal. This would mean his heal magic would be reversed into Waves of Erosion. Waves of Erosion is a magic technique that considers its user as its point of origin. These waves move outward in a spherical formation, spreading the erosion and taking the life force of anything it touches. The sphere's area of effect can be expanded, depending on the user's magic power. This means that the heal skill is now reversed into a more destructive power. Hideko is surprised by his new unique skill. He wonders whether it would be enough to beat the Mimic. He walks back to the room and sees that the Mimic has taken the shape of a box again. Hideko is scared at first and decides that the Mimic won't attack if he doesn't bother it first. But as he goes, he remembers how the Mimic almost destroyed his hands, and he suddenly wants revenge. Hideko activates Waves of Erosion and sends it to the Mimic. This causes an explosion that instantly kills the monster. Hideko can't believe how amazing his new skill is. The status window notifies him that the goddess's divine protection is activated, and instructs him to choose his spoils from the battle. The choices are between a camouflage skill that helps to freely change one's appearance, a precious chest with infinite storage capacity, and a recovery liquid medicine. Even though the camouflage sounds interesting, Hideko feels like the precious chest is needed the most at the moment. The status window notifies Hideko that he just destroyed a level 500 Mimic, and has received enough experience to level up. The man with the weakest occupation is now destroying a level 500 monster? Interesting. He receives a beep that he's leveled up, and then he receives another. The beeping goes on for a while, and he wonders if it's ever going to stop. His magic technique levels up. He also receives some other skills and are immediately enhanced to the maximum level. So much for being the weakest. After a while, the beeping stops, which allows Hideko Masamune to assess his new stats. His new stats are impressive to say the least. He wonders whether it means he's now very strong, or it just means that this world has very low standards. He also remembers that his classmates could have skills that are just as powerful as his current level, if not more. In the end, Hideko decides to keep moving to see what's ahead. Hideko walks ahead until he finds himself in front of a very large door. He feels intrigued by it and wants to see what's inside, but the door is impossible to open. Thankfully, our healer now has the Waves of Erosion skill. With that skill, he easily bursts open through the door and into the room. In the large room, he sees a staff that just hovers in the air without any support. It reminds him of the fantasy games he used to play, and since he feels like the staff would be a useful addition to his chest, he decides to go for it. He barely takes a couple of steps when the earth begins to rumble, almost like there's an earthquake. No, it's not an earthquake. There's another creature in the room. Hideko looks and notices a gigantic armored knight. He must be the guardian of the staff. The guardian is aggressive and immediately swings his longsword at Hideko. Fortunately, Hideko's defense and physical resistance leveled up at the last minute, allowing him to successfully dodge the sword attack. However, Hideko senses that it's a powerful strike, and he doesn't want to find out what a direct hit would do to him. The guardian doesn't attack for a while, and Hideko notices that he's still struggling to take his sword out of the ground. This is a window of opportunity that he mustn't miss. Hideko immediately activates Waves of Erosion and sends it to the guardian. The guardian falls back and lies still so that Hideko is sure of his victory. Waves of Erosion must really be a cheat code. Hideko is so happy that he doesn't see the guardian's huge leg coming from behind. The guardian kicks Hideko, sending him crashing into the wall in pain. If he hadn't upped his defense before now, Hideko would certainly be in big trouble. Hideko manages to heal himself and steady himself for another attack. Thankfully, the leg is the only part of the guardian that's off the ground, allowing Hideko some time to make another move. He uses Waves of Erosion again, but this time he focuses all his power on the attack. The continuous waves are too much to handle, and the attack eventually splits the guardian in half. This confirms his victory for sure this time. He receives a skill from his latest victory, the Mimic's Life, a skill only possessed by high-level mimics, which helps one to fabricate the information shown on their status screen. He also receives the high-grade Knight's Great Sword and Shield. The status window confirms his victory over the level 400 Giant Armor Mimic and notifies him of his leveling up. His new level on the status screen says level 2120, but Hideko refuses to get carried away, especially because the magic skills he has are only at level 5. There's also extra motivation that he received from Ares and his bullies. He can't forget that one for sure. Hideko Masamune finally picks up the hovering staff. The status window notifies him that he just picked up a magic tool, the Wrath of Saints, a staff that contains intermediate holy magic of the holy light element. Even though he doesn't fully understand what that means, Hideko feels that he might need it sometime in the future. He stores it in his precious chest and continues on his journey. After all, he's just getting started. In the top training area at Greyberg Academy, students are deep into their training sessions. However, Ichijo is struggling. especially after a failed attempt at creating a magic circle. The instructor in charge of the training, Philip Battler, steps in to give him some advice. He explains that the magic circle exploded because it wasn't stable, and he advises Ichijo to stay more focused. Philip also mentions that Ichijo's explosive magic is incredibly powerful, which makes it challenging to control, but he encourages him to learn to manage it without relying on circles and spells. Otherwise, he won't stand a chance against the demons. Saiki and Kita, seemingly taking a breather beneath a tree, start chatting about their lecturer's criticism, that their magical abilities fall short, and without ample magic power, their magic is essentially wasted. Saiki starts criticizing Ichijo, finding it absurd that even though he's the only one currently capable of wielding magic, he gets tired quickly and lacks any semblance of bravery. Yet, he still proudly labels himself a hero. Saiki believes that being labeled a hero and truly deserving that title are poles apart. To him, these titles are mere ornaments. On the other hand, Kita believes that no matter how much they desire it, changing their status isn't an easy feat. In the faraway labyrinth, Hideko just stumbled upon a bottle of alcohol and some food in a pantry. A lucky find indeed. He soon realizes that this marks his very first taste of alcohol, and to his surprise, it's rather pleasant. His curiosity leads him to a massive door, prompting him to explore its mysteries. As he steps inside, he's greeted by a peculiar figure seated on a throne. This man engages in conversation with a one-eyed flying creature named Zuri, inquiring about the last time an adventurer crossed his path. Zuri replies that it's been a staggering 150 years. The man can't help but be somewhat astonished by the realization that he's been sitting there for such an extended period. The man, rising from his throne, introduces himself to Hideko as Shaon, the Snake King. He suggests they start their battle, but in the middle of his speech, like a sudden bolt of lightning, he materializes right in front of Hideko and swiftly stabs him. Hideko doesn't even grasp when it all occurred, only realizing it when he starts feeling pain in his abdomen. Shaon expresses disappointment, as he's waited 150 years to confront an adventurer, pondering if the quality of adventurers has declined so drastically. He questions Hideko if he's a priest, thinking that might explain why Hideko couldn't perceive his movements. However, Zuri clarifies that Hideko is in fact a healer. Shaon finds himself astonished, wondering how a healer could have reached that place alone. Zuri attempts to hint to Shaon that there's something peculiar about Hideko's skill, but before he can do so, Hideko swiftly grasps his staff and activates the holy light. He aims the beam at Zuri, shattering it into pieces. Shaon becomes furious with Hideko for destroying his loyal companion and charges forward to confront him. However, Hideko releases his waves of erosion skill, directing them at Shaon. Fortunately, Shaon manages to narrowly evade a fatal blow, but the skill still takes its toll, breaking his sword into two pieces. Shaon's devastation deepens as he realizes that both his sword and his loyal familiar have been severely damaged. Hideko asks why he's making such a fuss over a simple sword, but before he can say more, Shaon swiftly slashes him. An enraged Shaon demands to know how Hideko could mock him after killing Zuri and breaking his sword. He warns Hideko that he won't let him leave alive. Hideko promptly starts healing himself, frustrated that Shaon is so fast that he can't even see his attacks coming. Shaon wonders if the magic that killed Zuri came from Hideko's staff, but he also notices that the magic Hideko just used doesn't show any signs of being supported by items. Finally, Shaon asks Hideko who he is, and Hideko replies by stating he's a healer, just as the one-eyed monster Zuri had earlier mentioned. Shaon, who doesn't believe a word he hears, resorts to slashing Hideko repeatedly until he finally spills the beans. According to Shaon, Zuri informed him that Hideko was strange, but Hideko chose to silence Zuri to prevent him from disclosing his secrets. Shaon finds it hard to accept that a healer would use offensive magic, implying that Hideko is concealing something. Despite enduring numerous slashes, Hideko continues to insist on being a healer. Shaon becomes even more frustrated that Hideko refuses to reveal his name, and instead incessantly repeats his profession. Hideko starts recalling the times when bullies used to taunt him as a NEET, and strangely, he begins to think that being called a NEET is preferable to being labeled a lowly healer. With newfound determination, he decides to reveal to Shaon that his name is now NEET. Hideko firmly commits to embracing this name and making it renowned, with the goal of getting back at those who once belittled him. Shaon finds the name amusing and even playfully mispronounces it, but he persists in asking Hideko what he truly is, to which Hideko unwaveringly responds that he remains a healer. Shaon, fed up with Hideko's games, decides to take a more ruthless approach in slashing him this time. After Hideko tumbles to the ground, Shaon makes a final attempt to strike him down. However, in a surprising twist, Hideko manages to unleash a powerful wave of erosion at the last moment, ultimately defeating Shaon. In Shaon's last words before his demise, he advises Hideko to conceal his true identity. Hideko, taken aback, questions Shaon's meaning. Xiaowen explains that despite holding incredible magic abilities with unique traits, the healer occupation is considered low grade. If word spreads out about Hideko's abilities, he'll become a target for others. People usually expect those in low-grade occupations to be weak, so hiding their true identity is the wiser choice. Hideko approaches Xiaowen, asking if it's okay to pose a question. Xiaowen agrees as a reward for Hideko defeating him. Hideko then inquires if Xiaowen is familiar with someone known as the God of Revenge. Xiaowen is startled by the name and experiences a sudden flashback to a conversation with an old friend who once told him that he wanted to start bearing the moniker God of Revenge. With a smile, Xiaowen finally comprehends everything. He informs Hideko that it's been a while since he heard that name, mentioning that it's a nickname for an adventurer who bore a curse. Xiaowen then advises Hideko to journey to distant lands, assuring him that one day he'll grasp the true meaning of it all. Xiaowen inquires about Hideko's true name, leaving Hideko stunned that Xiaowen had seen through his alias, Neat. Hideko then honestly discloses his real name. However, when Hideko asks Xiaowen why he had acted so strangely earlier, he realizes that Xiaowen has already passed away. Suddenly, Xiaowen's serpent sword Kilgills materializes before Hideko, and he receives a notification that he now possesses the sword. Initially, Hideko questions whether a healer like him can wield such a weapon, but he ultimately decides to accept it. As a reward for defeating Zuri, Hideko also gains the skill Magic Eye of the Truth, and in an unexpected twist, he inherits the skill Speed as a reward for defeating Xiaowen. Magic Eye of the Truth is a skill that allows you to secretly perform an appraisal on another person's status, without their knowledge or permission. After Xiaowen's defeat, Hideko roams through the labyrinth, and he stumbles upon an endlessly long staircase. Along the way, he sips from a bottle of alcohol, gets tipsy, uses a cure abnormal status to sober up, and repeats the cycle just to pass the time. While he keeps climbing, he suddenly hears a voice from behind, and what happens next truly astonishes him. When he turns to face the voice, he's suddenly standing in a forest. Bewildered, he wonders what just happened, as he's certain that just a moment ago, he was on those stairs. He starts thinking that he might have been teleported again because it feels similar to how he arrived in this weird world. But he chooses to stop worrying about it and be happy that he's out of the labyrinth. He decides to carry on his adventure elsewhere. Suddenly, he hears the same feminine voice he heard just before getting teleported. He looks back and sees 3 people a short distance away. 2 of them, a boy and a girl, are having an argument. The third person, a boy with dark hair holding a long katana, appears to be glaring at Hideko. While the other 2 are still arguing, Hideko just looks at them without expression, wondering if they're human. Then the girl asks her friends who Hideko is. The dark-haired boy steps out of the bushes and says it doesn't matter who Hideko is. There's a chance he overheard them, so they need to deal with him right away. Hideko gets scared when he hears the threat to finish him off. He tries to talk to the dark-haired boy, asking him to lower his weapon so they can talk things through. But without listening, the dark-haired boy rushes at Hideko, trying to attack him with his speed. To his surprise, in the blink of an eye, Hideko is suddenly behind the dark-haired boy's female companion, holding his sword at her throat and telling him not to move. The other boy gets frightened and shouts out the girl's name, referring to her as Eliza. The dark-haired boy turns around and asks Hideko how he managed to get past him, but Hideko pleads with him not to move. Hideko tells both boys to put away their swords. Eliza, the girl, calls the black-haired boy Jeek and implores him to lower his weapon since they've already lost. Jeek finally agrees and plants his sword on the ground, asking Hideko to release Eliza. Hideko questions if it's a trap, and Jeek promises not to fight anymore. Hideko decides to trust them and hands Eliza over to the other boy, Alfred. Hideko sheathes his sword and wastes no time bidding them farewell as he starts to leave. Unexpectedly, Jeek pleads with him to wait for a moment. He arrogantly inquires about the reason, considering that just a few minutes ago, they all wanted to harm him. Jeek introduces himself and explains to Hideko that he needs his assistance. Surprisingly, he extends an invitation to Hideko to join them. However, Hideko firmly declines and starts to depart, mentioning that it seems like a troublesome situation and urging them to seek help elsewhere. But as he walks away, he suddenly becomes aware that a barrage of fireballs is being launched at him from behind. Hideko narrowly avoids the fiery attack and asks Jeek to stop, wondering if he's lost his mind. In response, Jeek calmly states that he's quite composed, all the while summoning a powerful flame hammer spell. As Hideko ascended the stairs, he couldn't help but recall how he used a mischievous reversal advance technique on all his magic spells, which was the opposite of the soul break attribute. He realized that due to the lack of information about the range and scale of the skill's effect on magic, he wouldn't understand it fully until he tested it in an actual battle. Therefore, he chose to keep the skill in his reserves. However, he now reasoned that since the flame hammer had a relatively small scale, it presented the perfect opportunity for him to put the skill to the test. As the fire becomes just inches away, Hideko activates his special move, the Soul Break, instantly shattering Jeek's magic circle. Jeek is surprised at how easily his magic circle crumbles and starts to wonder if Hideko might be some kind of monster. Hideko gets ready to strike back at Jeek, but then Aliza unexpectedly grabs his hand and pleads with him to forgive and spare Jeek, despite Jeek being in the wrong. Hideko realizes that the situation is making him resemble his bullies, so he decides to let it all go, determined not to be like Saeki. As he starts to walk away again, Jeek stops him and asks if he wants to be their comrade. He confesses that from the beginning, he sensed that Hideko was no ordinary person, which is why he tested him, believing Hideko could dodge his attacks. Jeek wraps it up by explaining to Hideko that they're on the hunt for a tough ally because they're part of a special group, and that's why they need someone as strong as him. Hideko's curiosity kicks in, and he asks what's in it for him. Jeek's response is straightforward. They're ready to grant him anything he desires. Hideko, however, dismisses the offer, stating that he doesn't quite require anything, and even if he did, they couldn't provide what he truly wants. Aliza attempts to dissuade Jeek from recruiting Hideko, but Jeek emphasizes their urgency and the necessity of having a strong addition to their mission. Finally, Jeek makes a decisive move, presenting a ring to Hideko. He explains that it's a communication device, and if Hideko channels his magical powers into it, he can communicate with others from a distance. Jeek pleads with him to think it over, and then he goes on to explain that their group is called Dragon's Heart, and their mission is to get rid of corruption and bring about world peace. After thinking it through, Hideko agrees to accept the ring. He summons his dimensional storage and places it inside. Alfred is amazed to see this skill, and Hideko asks if it's rare. Alfred tells him it's the first time he's seen it in real life. Jeek tells Hideko that they're heading to Grey Belka because a month ago, the country managed to summon heroes, so they're going there to investigate. Hideko couldn't believe it when he heard the news because as far as he knew, only a few days had passed since he arrived here. Jeek asked him where he was going, and he said he was just going to town. Aliza then told him that it would take 3 days of walking to reach the town, and it was only then that she remembered to ask for his name. Hideko realizes that since they're heading to Grey Belka, it's not safe to use his real name. Instead, he decides that from then henceforth, he would adopt the alias Nito. So he gives them his new name, Nito. While wandering in the forest, Nito encounters a pack of wolves and decides to test the skills on them. However, just before he can act, a voice warns him to take cover. Out of nowhere, a girl wielding an epee appears and swiftly defeats all the wolves, thinking Nito is in danger and deciding to rescue him. She checks if he's okay, and he responds awkwardly, saying that he is. Nito thanks the girl for saving him, saying that he thought he was a goner. Using his appraising skill, he finds out that her name is Sierra Ekarlat, and she's a White King's knight. Sierra suddenly gets closer to him, telling him that he doesn't seem too happy about her helping him. Suddenly, a wagon makes its way towards them. A voice calls out to Sierra. When it reaches them, a man comes out and introduces himself as William Vector, and also introduces his escort, Keith. Sierra tells Nito her name, and Nito does the same. With a disturbed face, she tells Nito that he has a strange name. Later, the wagon continues through the forest, now with Nito in it. William informs them that they are currently transporting their goods to Rajazan. He explains that since he and Sierra know each other, he offered to give her a ride to Rajazan in exchange for her protection during the trip. Nito apologizes for troubling them, but William dismisses it, saying that one can never have enough guards when traveling. He then recalls Sierra jumping out of the wagon the moment she sensed a presence, and that such behavior was expected of her, although it surprised him a little bit. He also expresses his luck in seeing one of the White King's knights fight. Sierra blushes, claiming that it wasn't anything special. Nito then asks who the White King's knights are. Sierra, surprised that he doesn't know about them, explains that Rajazan, the royal capital, has a king who has ruled for generations named Arnold Rajazan. She explains that those who worked under him were known as the White King's Knights. William then chides in, saying that the truth is uncertain since the White King's Knights rarely make an appearance, and that it's almost like a miracle to see one of them in such a place as that. Flattered, Sierra tells him that he's exaggerating. Nito, however, inwardly agrees, thinking that he never thought he'd see a beautiful silver-haired girl either, and believes she's the heroine of this other world. Sierra then tells William that he's quite famous himself, but William humbly denies it. She continues, saying that there isn't anyone in the mercantile business who doesn't know him and that he was widely known for dealing with rare and valuable items. Nito then realizes that that was the reason William needed guards. William bowed his head, thanking him and saying that he wasn't worthy of such praise. William then asked Nito what he was doing in such an obscure place, and Nito tells him that he only wanted to go for an adventure. William then asks if he is about to go to the guild. At first, Nito is confused but quickly realizes that guilds exist in this world, a typical place to go when one is in another world. He then lies that he was on his way there. Sierra then offers to guide him when they get there. She then asks Nito about his class, and he's shocked that she casually asks him his class. He thinks about lying to her since he had always been told to hide his identity, but he ends up telling her the truth. He's a healer. Amazed, she asks him if he's planning to joining someone's party, and he tells her that he plans to if he manages to find the right one. Sierra then offers to help him ask around the guild. She warns him that a healer is a difficult class to become an adventurer with, but still assures him that he'll find someone to party with. Beginning to smile, Nito promises that he'll do his best, empowered by Sierra's optimism. Sierra then tells him that since he can't use offensive magic, it'll be best if he learns how to use 1 or 2 weapons. This information shocks Nito, surprising that he can use weapons even as a healer, since he was always told that healers are only good for healing. He then asks Sierra if he can use a fireball or a lightning strike. She tells him that it would be hard for him to do since healers and sorcerers have different natures of magic powers. He then asks her if he can do so using attribute enhancement, but she explains that attribute enhancement and magic attributes are different. Attribute enhancement being a support magic that can only be applied to weapons. As she continues to explain, Nito listens quietly, finding it hard to understand anything. She then tells him that despite everything, it's still rare to see a healer with the attribute enhancement spell, and that is more reason for him to learn swordsmanship. Nito then decides that he'll try learning it, and Sierra gladly offers to teach him. Later, the wagon arrives at Tanya village and the group decide to take a break. As they alight from the wagon, they see a crowd huddled around the door of a building. Curious, they ask the people what happened, and the crowd opens up to reveal an old man seated with other men. The old man asks the travelers who they are, and after some minutes of explaining, the old man understands and apologizes that the village is not in any state to welcome guests at the moment. He explains that their village was attacked by thieves and all the women of the village were taken away. The men around them shout that they've gathered to take their woman back, saying that they can't just sit back and let something like that happen. Sierra then tells the men that thieves and bandits work differently and that most thieves have connections to slavery owners. She adds that while they should save them as soon as possible, she asks that she and her group go instead. At first, the old man tries to stop them, but William tells him not to worry and to let them handle it. He then tells Sierra to take Keith with her, saying that he should be able to help. Sierra asks them if anyone knows where the thieves might have gone. At first, there's silence, but then a young boy by the name of Jack steps forward, saying that he followed after them and found their camp after climbing a mountain where he saw his mother and other villagers locked in cages. He volunteers to help them, saying that he wants to save his mother and everyone else. Later, they arrive at the camp and hide in some bushes nearby. Sierra tells Jack to leave the rest of them and wait in the village. As the thieves talk amongst themselves and the woman in the cages wait in despair, Nito can't help but feel as though he's in a game event. Sierra tells him that she and Keith will take care of the guards around the perimeter and will signal him when he's done. She tells him to stand by and to only focus on supporting them. He then admits inwardly that his staying back can't be helped since he's a healer. He decides to lay low for now and witness the power of the White King's Knights. Back in the village, the old man continues to worry about their safety. William continues to assure them that they'll be okay since Keith is with them. He also adds that though Sierra is young, she's still one of the White King's Knights. Meanwhile, back at the mountain, Sierra drives a rapier through a thief's chest. He falls to the floor dead. Later, Keith and Nito begin piling the bodies of the 3 thieves that were present. Nito compliments her fighting style, but Sierra humbly tells him that it wasn't anything special. Soon, they free all the women from the cages, and Sierra tells them that they're going back to the village and instructs them to follow them quietly. Sierra is thankful that most of the thieves weren't around, but Nito can't help but feel like it was too easy. As they get ready to leave, a man in a black suit, along with a few other people, approaches them and asks them where they think they're going. Sierra prepares herself, not surprised that the task wasn't going to be easy. The man agrees with her, saying that nobody could let their goods get taken away so easily. Nito then deduces that it was a trap all along. Sierra then finally recognizes him as Oliver Joe, a former knight of Rajazan and a captain of the Band of Ashes who suddenly slaughtered all of his men, set the city on fire and disappeared 2 years ago. The knight bows and playfully thanks her for the introduction. She asks him why someone of his caliber is in the thieving business, to which he answers that he doesn't like the idea of pledging allegiance to a country or a king and hates the idea of being used by them. She tells him that the current king is a generous person, but then he asks if his orders are absolute if such was the case. The question leaves Sierra frozen in fear. Oliver goes on, saying that she has the same eyes as the people he's killed. However, he won't be killing her because as a fine woman, she'd fetch a good price. He then sends his posse after them, commanding them to only kill the men. Sierra tells Nito to take everyone and run away. She uses her skill Ice Wind Storm and cuts down most of Oliver's goons. Oliver claps, saying he expected nothing less from a White King's Knight. Meanwhile, another goon runs towards Nito and the woman, but Keith quickly intervenes and kills him with a scale blanche. He calmly encourages Sierra to stay focused. Nito is spellbound by Keith's spell, amazed that such a thing is possible for an offensive class. Meanwhile, Oliver sighs, annoyed that the thieves are so weak, and claims that he's suffering from having weak underlings. Just as Sierra defeats the last of them, she suddenly hears a shout for help. One of the women cries out for Jack, who is now in the hands of Oliver, while the other woman holds her back. Jack cries out to his mother, but Oliver tells him to shut up. Sierra is confused as to why Jack was with him, and Oliver explains that he took the opportunity to capture him when he was going to the village by himself. He then tells her that only stupid people would leave a child alone in enemy territory and asks if she's really a White King's Knight. Jack continues to ask Sierra and his mother to save him, and Oliver pulls his hair, telling him again to shut up. He then pulls out a knife from his back pocket and thrusts it into Jack's neck. However, in a flash, Nito suddenly appears behind him, Oliver's knife now in his hands. He thrusts the blade into the thief's neck. Shortly after he processes what has just happened, Oliver falls to the floor dead. The others are spellbound by what had just happened. Slowly feeling nervous, Nito tries to change the subject, saying that they should head back since the village might be worried about them. While Keith simply lets go of the whole ordeal, Sierra demands an explanation from him about how he managed to do something like that, even asking to see his status. He then suggests that they head back to the village first. Sierra folds, telling him that he'll explain to her when they get back. As they make their way to the village, Nito compliments Keith's magic, but Keith simply smirks, saying that it's nothing compared to what Nito just did. He then realizes that he has no allies in this argument. He then ponders if adhering to Shaowen's advice is the best thing to do, since Jack would have died had he not acted. Back at the village, the men are excited to see the woman and the heroes back, and they all welcome them back joyfully. Nito looks around, happy at the sight of it all. Suddenly, he notices a cloaked girl standing beside a barn all by herself. Nito tries to talk to her, but she ignores him. The woman then tells him that she's not from the village and was already in the cage when they were brought here. Sierra approaches her and also tries to talk to her, telling her that she'll take care of her and that she'll send a request to the town hall to send her back to her hometown. Still nothing. Nito talks to her again, telling her that she could always go back there on her own, but if she doesn't know the way, then he'd take her there if she wants. At first, Sierra tells him that he should have said it more gently, but when the girl gently pulls on Nito's cloak, Sierra gets the message and begrudgingly leaves both of them alone. Nito tells the girl that she's made him look bad, and the girl suddenly speaks, saying that she doesn't like her. This shocks Nito, and he asks her why she didn't speak since. She then removes her cloak and tells him her name, Toatrika. She tells him that he can just call her Toa. He then introduces himself to her, and at first, he tries telling her that his name is Nito. He decides for some reason to tell her his real name, Masamune. However, he quickly tells her to call him Nito in front of others, to which she agrees. He then asks her how she got caught, but she explains that she has no idea, and that when she came to, she was already in the forest. He asks her where her home is, but she also doesn't know. Hearing this, Nito decides that they'll just have to try and find it. Meanwhile, at the wagon, William asks Keith how it went and what he thought about Sierra. Keith tells him that, like he said, her swordsmanship was amazing and that her murderous intent was magnificent. William then says that Nito was in for a tough time and that his path was full of thorns. However, Keith disagrees, saying that it won't be a problem and that Nito is a monster. William is both nervous and intrigued that Keith would say that much about him. The team finally leaves Tanya village early in the morning and resume their journey to Rizazin. On the way, Sierra reminds Nito that he still hasn't explained how he was able to beat Oliver despite being a healer. She tells him that she won't rest until he gives her a satisfactory answer. She even begins to question if he is a healer. Nito then shows her his status, explaining that he used the skill Godspeed to move quickly and steal the knife. Satisfied by this, Sierra apologizes for doubting him, but Nito tells her that it's fine as long as she understands. He then thanks his stars that he learned the skill mimics life. William then informs them that they've almost reached Rizazin. Out of the wagon, they see a city surrounded by a giant wall stretching as far as the eye can see. Nito gazes at the city in awe. Once they're inside, William bids farewell to them and hopes that he sees them next time. Nito, Sierra, and Tao thank him for the ride and head for the guild. Once they get there, Sierra guides him to a crystal ball which is used to check statuses for registration. As he places his hands on the crystal ball, he uses Mimic's life again and creates another fake status for himself. Sierra then asks him what he wants to do now that he's registered. He turns to Toa and asks if she wants to visit the town hall to try and find any clues about her hometown. Toa turns away, saying that she could do that later. Nito observes that she doesn't look eager to find her hometown. He then asks her if she wants to register as an adventurer, and she immediately decides to. Suddenly, a burly man puts his hand over Nito's shoulder. The man tells Nito that he envies him for having two beautiful girls to himself and asks if he can share him with his friends. With a sheepish smile, he apologizes to the man, telling him that both of them were his friends. The man immediately puts on a serious face, saying that he's telling Nito to leave them behind. He then tells Nito that being an adventurer is going to be tough for him since he is a healer and that he should just go home. Toa tells the man that he's being rude. He turns to her and tells her that she should leave Nito and join him and his friends, promising that it would be fun. Suddenly, some knights burst into the guild looking for Sierra. One of the knights, Annette, kneels in front of her, glad that she's returned to the capital safely. Looking at Nito and Tao, she then asks who they are and wonders if they interrupted anything. Sierra introduces them to Annette, and she thanks them for taking care of Sierra and suggests that they go back to the castle. Frustrated, the man finally speaks again and grabs Sierra by her cloak, shouting that she shouldn't ignore him while he's talking to her. Annette then grabs him and pins him to the ground, calling him rude and asking him if he has any idea who he's touching. Nito is surprised that the man is a C-grade adventurer considering that he's very weak. After the whole ordeal, Sierra bids Nito goodbye and asks Toa if she still doesn't want to go to the town hall, which she affirms. Hearing that, she decides to let it go and tells them that they're free to come to the Icarlot residence if any problem arises. After she leaves, Nito wonders what he should do now. He then realizes that he doesn't have money. Suddenly, a woman approaches them, saying that they have strange attires. She invites them into their shop and offers to trade some of their clothes with new ones. She offers him a new set of clothes and upon learning that he's a healer, a bag to keep herbs. She then explains to him that healers can only use weak healing magic, so they need as many healing items as they need. She then asks Tao what her class is, to which she replies that she was a paladin. Nito is confused, so the woman explains that paladins are also known as magic knights and are the only class capable of using magic and swordsmanship. Also, upon checking her status, they find out that she's a demon. Again, Nito is confused, so the woman explains that the demons are a race believed to live beyond the Great Forest and are always born with high magical power. She then asks the two what relationship they're in, and Nito sheepishly tells her that it's a strange combination. Afterwards, the two change into their new clothes, and the woman also gives Toa a broadsword and even gives them a small bag of money. She then tells Nito that although people in Rajazan are fine with demons, there are still some people who discriminate against them. She also adds that since demons have high magic power, they're easy to attract the attention of kidnappers, so she tells him to protect her and he promises to do so. As they leave, the woman tells them that her name is Sharon and that they should come back anytime they need anything again. Later, as they're having a drink in the open, Nito asks her if she can see his actual status with her skill Demon Eye of Truth, which she affirms. He then asks her what she thought when she saw it, to which she replies that apart from it being abnormal, she didn't think anything else of it. He then asks her why she got caught by the thieves even though she was much stronger than them, to which she answers that she was scared. He then asks her where she was before she was in the forest. Toa tells him that she is in a castle, which shocks him. He suddenly begins to theorize that she may be a royal or a princess if demons even have social statuses. In a daze, he asks her what she was doing in the castle, and she replied that she didn't do anything particularly because in the morning, she'd have magic and swordsmanship training, and in the night, she'd wait for her parents or her big sister to come home, and that while waiting for them, she'd sometimes play in the treasure room or talk with pixies in the garden. Nito suddenly realizes because she wasn't allowed to go outside from a young age, she never went outside the walls, so she was just scared of what was behind the walls and its people. She, like him, was experiencing the world for the very first time. Nito and Toa ventured into the forest to defeat goblins and collect their teeth to pay for their instay. Curiously, Nito wondered if goblins turn into corpses upon death, as he believes that mimics vanish after dying. Toa clarified that only mimics in dungeons disappear, but goblins typically do not. She added that goblins are monsters, not mimics. Nito, puzzled, inquired about their difference, and Toa explained that mimics are intelligent and can speak human language, while monsters are entirely different. Nito soon realizes that Zuri wasn't a monster as he thought, but rather a mimic. Later, Nito and Toa head back to the guild to sell goblin teeth. Seeing Toa yawning, Nito thinks she's tired from their day's work, so he suggests finding an inn to rest. The receptionist gives them a map and recommends a free room at an inn for the night. Suddenly, a pompous-looking man approaches from behind, curious about Toa's name. Nito steps up, warning the man that Toa is with him. The man, unfamiliar with Nito, inquires if he's an adventurer, and Nito confirms that he is. The man then says to Nito that it's understandable if he doesn't recognize him, but he goes on to berate Nito for beginning with goblin extermination. Nito feels hurt but attempts to hide it by politely attempting to end the conversation. However, as they walk away, the man sarcastically comments that low-ranking missions don't pay well. Nito, once more being polite, reassures the man that they don't need to worry about their finances. However, the man rudely interrupts, telling Nito to be quiet because he's talking to the lady beside him, not to him. The man attempts to impress Toa by suggesting that if she joins him, he can conquer various challenging tasks like hunting wolves, giant snakes, and even grizzleheads. Eventually, he admits to witnessing Nito's dispute with another man earlier and knowing that Nito is a healer. The arrogant man takes a jab at Nito, insinuating that his journey may be cut short and he might end up in a cheap inn that night. He uncomfortably grabs Toa's shoulder and hints that if she accompanies him, he can offer her much more satisfaction than Nito ever could. Nito realizes the man has a hidden agenda and decides it's not worth arguing with him. Instead, he suggests to Toa that they should leave, but Toa doesn't seem willing to back down. Nito tries to get her attention, but she ignores him and uses a powerful bolt of lightning magic to knock out the man, surprising everyone in the guild. Nito grabs her hand and they quickly exit the guild. As they walk, Toa, still angry, starts walking faster than Nito. He repeatedly asks her to slow down just for a moment. At first, she ignores him, but eventually she stops and emotionally asks him why he didn't say anything to the man, especially since he's strong enough to defend himself. Nito lets out a sigh and explains to her that his strength led him to believe the man wasn't worth his attention, so he decided to ignore him to avoid causing a scene. Nito notices Toa starting to clench her fist in frustration and anger. He acknowledges that he was indeed angry at the man, but thought it best not to express it directly. However, he's taken aback by Toa's tears, considering they've only just met and don't even know each other well yet. Nito says sorry to Toa and admits that he briefly thought about confronting the guy physically. He also thanks her for getting upset on his behalf and promises to stand up for himself next time. However, he understands that in this world, healers aren't expected to be strong, so he'll try to resolve things without causing a big fuss. Toa stops crying and tells him that she gets it. She lovingly reassures him that she's willing to get angry on his behalf instead. Toa and Nito relish a scrumptious meal, acquired from a Wallstein monster. Nito is quite convinced that Toa must have savored this delicacy on numerous occasions before, but to his surprise, she confesses that she hasn't. Nito finds it puzzling, as he believes their meal is fit for royalty, and he wonders how Toa hasn't experienced such delectable meat. In response, Toa shares that her dietary choices have always revolved around what was specifically prepared for her. She needed food that would enhance her magical abilities, hence her previous culinary experiences being quite different. Nito gradually discovers that the more time he spends with Toa, the more fascinating she becomes. He decides that it's a good idea for them to embark on a scouting mission in the Land of Demons, as it's likely where Toa's home is situated. Toa takes another delightful forkful of her meal and comments that this food is bound to enhance her strength more than her previous meals ever did. She's so impressed with the prospect of such rewards from this delicious meal that she's more than willing to repeat the experience. Nito is delighted to see that the meal has put Toa in high spirits. He suggests that they embark on another quest the following day, in pursuit of an even larger reward. Toa readily agrees to the proposal. After the meal, Nito and Toa book a popular inn with a cozy bed and a soothing bath. They're rather lucky to have been able to get such a popular inn. Nito suggests he'll take the floor so Toa can have the bed, but Toa makes a better suggestion that they take either side of the bed. It's big enough for both of them, plus he'll catch a cold on the floor. Nito expresses he's not a peaceful sleeper, tossing about and all, but Toa decides she doesn't mind. Using his real name, Masamune, to address him, she states she trusts him. The statement startles and confuses Nito. Toa settles into bed and asks if Nito won't be joining her. Without a further explanation to the statement he found startling, he gets in bed next to her. While Toa seems fast asleep, Nito is restless. Toa calls out to him asking if he's asleep yet, and he admits he's far from it. Toa reveals she was always alone in the castle. Her parents returned to the castle late at night, and her sister was always MIA. Her only friends were the pixies, and she was always generally alone. At this moment, with Nito by her side, Toa no longer experiences the sense of loneliness. She warmly wishes Nito a good night, drawing closer to him for a comforting snuggle. This simple yet affectionate gesture brings relaxation to Nito, and as a result, he gradually drifts into a peaceful slumber. The next day, they have a visitor at their door. Nito groggily answers, stating it's too early in the morning to be having visitors. The visitor, Sierra, states it's noon and she's come over because she was hoping to teach him swordsmanship skills today. The conversation stirs Toa awake, who asks what the noise is about. Sierra is surprised to see her there, dressed provocatively, and Nito is immediately caught in a heated feud between both women. Sierra apologizes for her behavior over lunch. She apologizes for jumping to conclusions and attacking Nito, which is appalling as she is a white knight. Nito brushes the past off. Sierra mentions overhearing Nito being referred to as Masamune by Toa and is able to put together that Nito is an alias. Nito begs her to keep her discovery to herself. He makes a mental note to make sure Toa is careful with using the name, as he would prefer the public didn't know. Sierra asks if Masamune is his Gikoku name. Gikoku is a country that can be found across the sea from the Venome continent. The occupants are known to use similar names to the one Nito has. Nito makes a mental note to gather more information on the country. Sierra brings up the prospect of teaching swordsmanship skills again, and Nito expresses he does have plans today to take quests from the guild, as he is in need of money. Sierra asks if she can tag along, promising that she can be of help. With her, they'll be able to take high reward quests. It's agreed on. High reward quests it is. They arrive at the guild and are told there are grades for adventurers based on their achievements. The lowest grade is F, and the highest grade is SSS. Toa and Nito are currently good enough for grade E requests, but Sierra's presence gives them an advantage of a boost to grade D or even higher requests. Nito asks Sierra if she is also an adventurer, and she answers that before she took oaths to serve her country, she too took requests from the guild. It is required for the knights serving the country to be registered as adventurers, so technically all knights are also adventurers. Nito still expresses worry, asking if it is okay for Sierra to show up in the guild 2 days in a row, as it is commonly believed that the white knights are not supposed to be seen in public. She waves him off, saying she knows how to blend in and mellow down. Plus, she's going into the guild as a knight, not an adventurer. Moving forward, they discuss what kinds of requests they should take on, taking into consideration that everything on the list looks doable for Nito. He scans the post himself and points at one with a monster he can't identify. Sierra explains that the monster is called a Kalane. Kalane, a huge beast with 2 horns that lives in the forest. Nito suggests that they embrace the challenge posed by the Kalane. Sierra inquires if, once they've completed the essential formalities with the receptionist, they can make a quick visit to the store. The group comes to a unanimous agreement. They arrive at Sharon's store and Sharon happens to know Sierra, asking her if she is on an off day. Sierra tells her yes and notifies that they have a mission to defeat a Kalane, so they're thinking of stocking up on Catherine medicine. Nito, ever curious, asks what that is, and Sharon explains it's medicine that protects the hearing. Turns out a Kalane's voice can paralyze its victim's body, so it is essential that they have it. Sharon remembers Nito as the healer who visited her store earlier, on closer look. She also spills the beans that Toa is a paladin. Sierra is shocked to hear that and expresses her disbelief by continually repeating it even as they approach the Grill Forest. Apparently, there's only one person in the whole country who has the paladin class. It's an extremely rare class to have, even with the White King's Knights. Anyone else who learns Toa is of the paladin class would be equally surprised. Nito then reasons that if the information is so sensitive, then it's best Sierra keeps it to herself henceforth. Inwardly, he feels like he's screwed. What if Sierra blurts out his real name to someone? She's barely containing the paladin secret. Emerging from the dense forest, a group of individuals catches Sierra's attention, prompting her to inquire about their experiences. They begin to recount their forest adventure, sharing that initially, things were proceeding smoothly as they were searching for orcs. However, their journey took an alarming turn when they observed orcs, goblins, and wolves frantically darting about in a state of panic. Despite their better judgment, they choose to stay put and witness a Kalane's appearance. What struck them as odd was that this particular Kalane appeared quite peculiar. One of the group members confidently declares that he's familiar with what a Kalane should typically look like, but this one defied those expectations, leaving them bewildered. Sierra prompts if the Kalane they saw was covered in grains of light, and they agree that indeed it was. They all hear a terrifying sound at that moment that has birds fluttering away. The giant of the beast steps out, and the group of people who emerge from the forest admit the Kalane must have been on their trail. Sierra confidently switches into hero mode, assuring everyone that she and her crew will take charge of the situation. Meanwhile, she advises the others to prioritize their safety. Nito briefly finds himself captivated by the imposing beast, prompting Sierra to kindly inform him that he's gazing at a fearsome creature known as a newt Kalane. Much like adventurers, beasts are also evaluated based on their difficulty. Overcoming a Kalane is considered a formidable grade A challenge, even though the Kalane itself falls into the grade B category. However, practically speaking, they are often regarded as grade A creatures because of their fierce nature and peculiar vocalizations. To put it differently, requesting to deal with Kalanes is a perilous undertaking. After the quick lecture, Sierra asks if both Nito and Toa are fine, and they both say they are. As for Sierra, the beast's voice has affected her mana circulation. She thinks back to when she saw Nito in action and asks herself if things go south, will she be able to leave it up to Nito? Nito declares he can handle it. He views the monster stat bar and sees the beast as a level 32, which he decides isn't going to be tough to handle. The strategy is that Toa will also support Sierra. Toa takes the lead and executes an Ice Slash skill with her Ice Greatsword. She wonders if it's immune to weapons, but there's only one way to find out. She gets close enough to attack, but finds out soon that there's some sort of barrier. Toa notices quickly that magic has no effect on the beast. Apparently, newt Kalanes can control magic particles with their antlers. Nito gets the idea to destroy the antlers then, but before they can do anything, the Kalain releases a light beam, but Sierra is quick enough to use magic to provide a shield that's barely holding on. She creates 2 magic circles at once, but the creature uses a lightning howl to destroy it. Nito thinks deeply and decides maybe they need to change tactics. Instead of using brute force, they should be more analytical. If the creature controls magic particles, then its attacks would be magical in nature. Its invulnerability must have a gimmick to it. Nito finally comes up with a solid approach. When the monster initially releases the light beam, he notices some of the light in the beam vanishes almost immediately. The goal is to aim for that opening. Toa gets worried, speaking on the possibility of Nito getting hit. She offers to be used as a decoy, but Nito tells her he'll be done and over with it quickly. He activates his soul break skill once the monster releases a light beam and is able to penetrate through the monster's barrier and break off his antlers. Now that that's done, the Kalain won't be able to block their attacks. He asks that they give him more time as there's something else he would like to try. Sierra is too stunned to say much, and Nito pleads that whatever goes down, and has happened so far, has to be kept a secret. Back in the castle, a messenger reports the sightings of a Kalain surrounded by magic particles in the Grill Forest. The informants are 4 adventurers who then reported to the messenger. They were wounded and are currently being attended to in the hospital. According to what they said, there are some adventurers who stayed behind to tackle the monster. One of the adventurers is a female who has silver hair and is holding a rapier. The messenger is asked to report to Raid and Hilda all he has just said. The messenger arrives to deliver their report to none other than the esteemed leader of the White King's Knights, Reinhardt Rickman. He's certainly no stranger to the identity of the silver-haired woman, Sierra. However, the news leaves him in disbelief as he learns that Sierra is currently engaged in a battle against a formidable Newt Kalain. 2 days ago, when everyone in Tanya Village had gone to sleep, Nito went to check Oliver's status. Oliver is a fire magic user that possesses elemental magic Nito wasn't sure he'd be able to use. It was then that a message popped up, one that looked like a quest announcement. The message contained information regarding Oliver's beloved wife, Anna. He had dedicated himself to becoming a knight and even earned a promotion to a leadership role, all driven by his love for her. However, when he returned from a grueling battle one fateful day, he received the heartbreaking news that Anna had turned to a life of thievery and tragically lost her life while attempting a theft. This revelation was more than sufficient to plunge him into a deep sense of despair. To exacerbate his distress, his fellow comrades added insult to injury by teasing him about his ill fate. The letter contains additional troubling information concerning the assassination of the king, which raises Nito's curiosity even further. He can't help but wonder why Oliver would have accepted such a grave and puzzling order. There's a lot the message doesn't explain, but when he's done reading, he acquires a magic Hellfire skill. The skill is a result of fire born from Oliver's grudge, which would gradually burn the target. Nito's anxiety hits the roof. He doesn't know how to go about learning the new magic skill, and wonders if it is as unstable as elemental magic. There's also the fact that he doesn't recognize the spell attached to the skill. He sinks to the floor, exasperated, deciding he hates being a healer. He then gets the idea to use the skill in reverse. The opposite of fire is water. It seems worth the shot, so he goes ahead and activates Mischievous Reversal through God of Revenge's Mischief. Magic Hellfire is then reversed to Goddess Bloody Tears. He starts feeling a sensation he can't explain, a dark energy surrounding him that gives him sharp claws and bloody eyes to peer into another dimension. He watches the Kalain beast slowly begin to deteriorate till it's nothing but a pulp and then a pool of blood. Toa asks him if it's over yet, and he reports that the strange sensation he previously felt is gone. They hear rustling in the bushes and know someone is coming, so they have to leave before they're spotted. Nito doesn't really want to be discovered or have the spotlight on him as the one who killed the beast, so he pleads that Sierra finish up while him and Toa take cover. Everything that has happened so far has to be a secret, so Nito lets Sierra know that he's trusting her to handle the situation well. They all plan to reunite at the capital. Toa promises to tell the innkeeper about the location. Sierra is left alone, wondering who on earth Masamune really is. People on horses race through the forest. They were sent out to catch up with the adventurers battling with the Kalain. Part of this crew is White Knight Raid Black and Hilda Ecarlet. Raid looks forward to the battle with the monster, planning to slice it up with a scythe. They reach their location and find absolutely nothing. No Kalain, no adventurers. Then they look closely and find a dark shapeless mass they decide must be the remains of the Newt Kalain. Raid doesn't see how anyone will believe that, but it's their only lead for now. They find a stunned Sierra and ask her questions, but she isn't forthcoming. When she's asked about the other 2 adventurers that are supposed to be in her company, she replies that they are no longer here. It would take at least 4 White Knights to take down a Newt Kalain, and the other knights can't believe that Sierra defeated one by herself. Raid comes to the conclusion that the other adventurers were eaten by the Newt. It still doesn't explain how Sierra defeated the monster alone, but it's a good enough explanation for now to contact the knight's office and collect whatever items around them they can lay their hands on. Reinhardt reports back to the King of Rajazan that from indication, Sierra defeated the beast, but it's hard to tell due to her unstable condition. They should wait for results to confirm. The king is satisfied with the report and gives the go-ahead to Reinhardt to continue with his investigation. Outside the palace room is White King's knight, Daniel King, who's waiting for Reinhardt. He tries to milk information out of Reinhardt, asking him questions that Reinhardt responds with a still investigating. Daniel pushes for any information at all, and Reinhardt makes him understand that he's also technically in the dark about the situation. The remains of the Nuke Kalain is currently with the autopsy team, so they'll need to wait for results. But if Daniel is feeling up to the task, he can go ask Sierra herself what happened. Daniel starts to suspect that something suspicious might have taken place. Reinhardt shares that Sierra was indeed part of the battle, along with 2 fellow adventurers who have currently disappeared. When the knights arrived on the scene, the condition of Nuke Kalain's body was so deteriorated that it initially posed a challenge to confirm if it was indeed a Nuke Kalain. Furthermore, an exceptionally large quantity of blood was present, adding to the mystery. Daniel reasons that the missing adventurers are the missing piece to the puzzle on their hands. Sierra knows what happened, but she isn't snitching. Daniel asks how far they've gone with interrogating her, and Reinhardt states he doesn't want to hear what she doesn't want to say. The bottom line is that if those 2 adventurers did defeat the Nuke Kalain, then they're as strong as White Knights. Even stronger, as Reinhardt chimes. Daniel doesn't see how that's possible. People stronger than their knight leader? Reinhardt shrugs. He can't say for sure, but Sierra better hope those missing adventurers aren't a danger or threat to the country, because if they are, then she will suffer the consequences for keeping mute about them. At this point, there's only one thing to clarify. Are they enemies or allies? Toa and Nito discuss what really happened back there. Nito shouldn't be able to control elemental magic, and he decides from now on he'll seal the skill. He was able to break the Kalain's antlers bare-handed, which is scary on its own, but one step at a time, we guess. Toa tells him if he doesn't want to use his powers, then she'll do her best on her part to protect him. Nito finds the courage to ask Toa what brought about her high level of trust from the minute they met. Before she can respond, Sierra shows up and Nito gives the go-ahead to have that conversation another time. He then apologizes to Sierra for making her come all the way, who in return apologizes for interrupting whatever conversation they might have been previously having. Sierra lets Nito know that he has to remain low-key for the time being. She updates them about the Nuke Kalain that was taken for autopsy, and how she's kept her mouth shut about Nito and Toa's whereabouts, but she's not sure how long she can keep stalling. Nito is a little disappointed that they did all that work and won't be getting a reward, but Sierra states it's best they don't draw any sort of attention to themselves. In other words, goodbye reward. While they discuss, Raid steps into the scene. Turns out he was trailing Sierra, and he's in the mood to find out which one of the adventurers took out the fun before he could get a chance. He reveals that when the White Knights were sent to confront the Nuke Kalain, its horn was already snapped, and it was covered in a pool of blood. Now, the regular way to kill a Nuke Kalain would be to use physical attacks, since the monster is immune to magic. However, Raid Black can tell that the damage to the monster was done by magic. Raid also recalls the broken horns of the monster. The horns are normally too tough to be broken. He concluded that whoever defeated the monster simply couldn't be overlooked. That's the reason Raid followed Sierra from the start, and her trail led him to Nito and Toa. Sierra tries to reason with Raid, telling him that Nito and Toa aren't enemies, but the warrior is long past the listening stage right now. He unleashes his power and makes a move to attack them. Meanwhile, Reinhardt, while still talking with Daniel King, senses that Raid just unleashed his magic power. He decides to see what happened for himself. Raid Black attacks his opponents with his sword, but Toa blocks the blow at the last minute. When he asks, she introduces herself as Toa Trika and admits to killing the Nuke Kalain. Raid is a little taken aback, as he expected Nito to be the killer. Then again, he doesn't sense any magic power from Nito, so he concludes that the lady is being honest. Now that he knows the killer, or at least he thinks he does, he attacks Toa aggressively. Nito calls out, but Toa tells him to stay back, while she matches every blow from Raid with an excellent defense. Raid is surprised that Toa is strong enough to battle him and still entertain distractions. While he's impressed, he decides to end the battle quickly by activating Fire Armor skill. His skill use takes Toa off guard, as she doesn't expect him to be a magic user. Raid Black now has the upper hand in his fight against Toa. He lands blows and tosses Toa from side to side. The White Knight challenges Toa to show her true power, saying that her current power wouldn't save her from him. Toa insists that she has already shown her full power, which is disappointing to Raid. He decides to end the battle with his next move. Fortunately for Toa, Reinhardt intervenes at that moment, effectively stopping the skill from harming her. Raid Black is disappointed and questions Reinhardt's actions, but Reinhardt throws the question back at him, saying it's not his fight to pick. Their little vocal exchange gives Nito enough time to heal Toa. Nito also asks why she didn't show her full magic power, and she says that the magic would end up destroying everything around her. It looks like she hid some power after all. Raid tells Reinhardt that Toa is the monster killer, but Reinhardt reacts indifferently, almost looking unconcerned. While Reinhardt suggests that the killer was just fulfilling a request, Raid insists that she had something to hide, which is why she went into hiding immediately afterwards. Raid notices Nito and asks if he's a priest, as he just healed Toa. When he learns that Nito is just a healer, he laughs at the rank, saying it's probably the reason he didn't sense any magic from Nito. These words don't sit too well with Reinhardt, as he senses something very different from Nito. Raid Black has had enough of this chit-chat. He draws his sword and enters battle mode again, focusing his attack on Toa. He insists that she's a dangerous person, and that he's saving the entire country by eliminating her. The pleas of Reinhardt and the others fall on deaf ears, as the White Knight's mind is already set. With his sword, he strikes a blow in Toa's direction. The result is a layer of dust that eventually clears to reveal Raid passed out on the ground. Toa is the only one around the area, as he somehow moved the rest of his friends to a safe distance, all within the short moment Raid Black used to attack. There's no doubt now, and Reinhardt sees that Nito is the one who killed the Newt Kalain. Sierra rushes in, begging Reinhardt not to take any action, and promises that Nito Masamune isn't an enemy. Reinhardt sees that he instinctively drew his sword, so he takes it back in and apologizes for Raid's actions. He makes it clear that from the start, he felt something different from Nito. Usually when magic powers are much greater than theirs, individuals hardly sense it. This is probably the reason Raid couldn't sense anything from Nito. Nito explains why he didn't show himself earlier, saying that he doesn't want to stand out. Reinhardt completely understands and promises to take full responsibility for everything. In his report, he also promises to say that he and Toa just assisted Sierra in the killing. He also promises to get the reward to them. He bids them farewell, taking Raid on his back, and hopes to meet Nito again someday. From Nito's point of view, he merely landed a simple punch on Raid. He had no intention of blowing his cover with that move. Back at the palace, Daniel King gives Reinhardt more interesting news about the Newt Kalain. From what the autopsy revealed, the monster wasn't a normal Newt Kalain. With the structure of its internal organs, they can tell that it was already dead before facing the adventurers. This could only mean one thing. Someone is manipulating the sacred beast from behind the scenes. Daniel King and Reinhardt agree that this might not be the last they hear of the matter. They must prepare for the unknown, terrible danger that approaches the country. After the events of the past few days, Sierra invites Nito and Toa, who are short of cash, to her family house, the Acarlet residence. Nito teases Sierra about being a mademoiselle from a noble home, but she says that she simply wants to be known as a knight. Sierra's parents, Braun and Maria Acarlet, welcome Nito and Toa nicely. They reveal how much Sierra has told them about Nito. She talks about them so much that one would say she talks a little too much. Just then, Sierra's pretty sister, Hilda, arrives to join them for dinner. She introduces herself and Nito looks a little starstruck. She's also heard stories about Nito's heroics, including the latest one with the Newt Kalain. As he thinks about it properly, Nito realizes that both Sierra and Hilda are part of the White Knights. His train of thought makes him consider whether she knows his secret as part of the White Knights or the Acarlet household. Nito praises the family for having 2 children among the King's White Knights. Hilda plays it down, saying that a space just opened up that they could fill. According to her, she and Sierra learned swordsmanship from childhood and became Kingdom Knights. Eventually, their skills were recognized and they became White Knights. However, she insists that their talent is nothing compared to Reinhardt's, who was selected as a White Knight at only 12 years old, a true prodigy. Then again, Hilda also notes that Reinhardt's talent might be dwarfed in comparison to Nito's, making Nito's heart skip, thinking about just how much she knows. Sierra jumps in at this point, warning Nito to be careful with her sister, labeling her sister a predatory snake about her feminine charms. Hilda teases Sierra, asking whether Nito is her boyfriend. She goes one step further by asking Nito what he has done with Sierra. While Sierra's cheeks are flustered, Nito enjoys the sibling chemistry between the White Knights. Just then, Toa enters the conversation, asking Sierra to back off from Nito. Oh, looks like Sierra has a rival and it's not her sister. Toa has a bottle in hand and slurs her words, so they can tell she's drunk at the moment. Nito eventually takes Toa to her room. He also teases Sierra about her sister's attitude. Sierra wonders aloud why Toa seems to confide in Nito much more than her, even though they both knew Toa at the same time. Nito confesses to being curious too, and decides to ask next time. Sierra shows Nito to a different room. Before she bids him farewell, she offers to teach him a thing or two about swordsmanship the next day, if he's interested. His original plan is to go to the guild to make some money the next day, but Nito accepts the offer, leaving Sierra elated. He ponders Sierra's expression so much that he doesn't notice Hilda sneaking up on him from behind. She's a little exposed in the clothing, but insists that she just happened to pass by. She also asks if he truly defeated Raid, and he confirms that he did it to save Toa. She infers that he and Toa have feelings for each other, but Nito is embarrassed and denies it. Hilda begs Nito not to leave her sister out, saying it's the first time she's ever shown interest in a man. She also pleads with Nito to take Sierra along when he eventually leaves the country, whether she likes it or not, as she feels it's the best thing to do for her. Hilda says her sister deserves to know other things apart from swinging swords, which she's done all her life. Nito wakes up the next morning to meet Hilda in his bed. He confronts her and she says there was nobody with her on her bed. She asks him if she did anything wrong and he can't provide a straight response. Just then, Sierra comes into the room and her countenance changes. It's hard to explain the situation, but Nito tries to convince Sierra that it's not what it looks like. Later that day, they begin their sword training. Even though he didn't expect to learn it in one day, the training was more difficult than Nito anticipated. Sierra reveals that she started learning swordsmanship as early as 3 years old. Hilda learned around that age too. It happened when Hilda was lost in the forest and attacked by a Leo wolf. Thankfully, her father came to her rescue. He taught his children to use swords and magic immediately after. Nito finds it hard to believe that their gentle father was strong enough to defeat an S-rank Leo wolf. From the ranking system, a Leo wolf is said to be even stronger than the Newt Kalain. Knights and adventurers gathered from all over the kingdom would usually have to work together to barely defeat it. Nito secretly wishes to meet the monster someday. Nito asks for current people in the kingdom who have battled S-rank monsters, and they refer him to Reinhardt, saying he's the only one who would know of that. In the guild, there are S-ranked missions that require you to defeat S-ranked monsters. These monsters are scarce in the currently peaceful country of Rajazan. Sometimes, you might receive an S-ranked mission to defeat an A-ranked monster, as the same type of monster can be A-ranked, S-ranked, or higher, depending on their level. Nito asked where a level 500 Mimic would be ranked. They replied that its ranking status would be unranked or infinite tier if it does exist, as the guild's ranking system doesn't go beyond SSS ranked monsters. Nito asked whether she thinks such a monster exists, and Sierra replies that even if it does, anyone who has encountered it is surely dead by now, which might be why they remain unidentified. Nito thinks back to the dungeon where he encountered the Mimic. He wonders why he didn't ask Shaoan more about the place. Nito wakes up in a strange place, despite remembering sleeping in Sierra's house that day. He wonders if he's dead, and then he looks back and sees Shaoan behind him. He draws his weapon, but the swordsman calms him down, saying he's not there for a fight. He invites Nito to take a walk with him. They walk for a little while until they meet another person who says he's been expecting Nito as he invited him. Nito doesn't recognize the young man, and he can tell, so he changes his shape to something he knows Nito would recognize much more easily. Nito sees the new form and hears the new voice. He recognizes the voice from the dungeon, the one that told him to drink the potion for more power. Shaoan introduces the creature as his comrade, but the creature prevents him from giving his name away. Nito is disappointed that he can't know the creature's name, but deep in his thoughts, he feels like it's the god of revenge. When he says it out, he observes Shaoan's reaction and concludes that he's correct. The god of revenge says that while the place is nowhere to Nito, it's a prison for him and Shaoan. He also reveals that he summoned Nito's soul by using the effect of the elixir potion Nito drank back then. He assures Nito that his real body is sleeping at Sierra's house at the moment. When asked, he reveals that the elixir is simply his blood, and it gives anyone who drinks it a unique random skill. The skill given, however, is an infinite tier unidentified skill, even though some skills wouldn't be usable. He also reveals that he didn't choose Nito to drink the elixir, but the potion was just placed there as an experiment. Nito wonders how he could be dead by now if not for his luck. One reason why he's summoned, according to them, is for Shaoan to pass on his swordsmanship techniques to Nito. At first, Nito thinks that it involves training with them like Sierra and Hilda, but Shaoan assures him that it would likely only take a moment. Nito asks if it's the main reason he's summoned, but they hold back answers from him. He asks a couple of follow-up questions, but the god of revenge particularly chooses to remain mysterious. However, he assures Nito that he will get the answer someday. Oh great, another mystery. When he asks, he learns that the act would hurt just as much as drinking the elixir. Finally, an answer. Nito feels that he's come a long way since then, so he concludes that the pain won't be so much. From the moment Shaoan places his palm on Nito's forehead, to the moment he takes it off, our young healer feels unimaginable pain. However, he also sees techniques being transferred with his bare eyes. He gets memory flashes of various sword techniques, and he also sees one that is still unnamed. Shaoan introduces that as his special technique, saying it's a technique without weak spots. The god of revenge instructs Nito to go to the Bayament to find a woman named Khalifa. He's to tell her the exact sentence, "I'll wait for you on that hill." If she asks a question, he must respond with, "It's in the third drawer." To make her fully understand, Nito can barely keep track of what's going on, but he tries to keep the words in his head. The god of revenge also advises Nito to go to a school and learn magic. Even though he's just a healer, his knowledge about his occupation would increase through study. According to the god of revenge, magic is limitless, a phrase that Nito is glad to hear. Shaoan also instructs Nito to give his sword to the demon girl, as it's a special sword that doesn't suit him. Nito is surprised that they know so much about him. It's like they constantly watch him or something. Before he asks, his vision starts to get blurry, and the voices of the other guys seem more distant by the minute. They reveal that there's a time limit for the summoning, which has passed, and that there's a possibility that this would be the last time they ever converse. Just before Nito completely goes, he hears the god of revenge saying, "Find us." At the Old Town district of the royal capital, there's a shady meeting going on that involves Madame Fran, Borfrine, and two others, Guido Sidor and Yun Yi. Guido tells Madame Fran how her last spirit beast creation failed and was easily stopped, taking no lives among the White Knights. He informs her that an unknown adventurer intercepted the beast and bloodied it up before the White Knights got there. However, with Yun Yi's help, he retrieved the corpse that was used for autopsy, and he now wants Madame Fran to revive the beast. Madame Fran, who already anticipated the request, gives them a big container that she says is filled with different monsters of B rank and above. According to her, she managed to borrow some S-ranked monsters and add to them, by borrowing some of the laboratory resources when she left the Empire. Guido reveals his intention to attack in a week, and asks Madame Fran to make as many spirit beasts as possible within that time. The new spirit beasts, according to Guido, are assurances in case the adventurer shows up again. Nito is out eating with Toa and Sierra, but he can't seem to concentrate on what they're talking about. His mind keeps taking him back to the god of revenge's last words. Sierra notices his pale face and questions him about it. She also points out that he couldn't participate in training that day. When she asks whether he's lost interest, Nito waves off the suggestion, saying he's just more interested in exploring the town for that day. Deep down, he remembers watching their training in slow motion and in a predictable style. He avoided training to avoid questions from them when they notice his change in style, but he still needs excuses to avoid subsequent practices. At that moment, a man forcefully walks in with a little beast girl. From the way he treats her, they can tell that he's a slave merchant. Sierra requests that they deal with the situation. The slave merchant walks into the inner part of the building and throws the beast girl into a cage, entrusting his men to watch over her while he's gone. The little girl is scared and sobs quietly, calling out her sister to help. In a little while, more men enter the room and look at their new slave catch. The men suggest that they harass the poor girl a little since their master isn't around. The first man picks up the scared little girl and licks his lips, while the other man is on the lookout for their boss. Thankfully, before they can unjustly touch the little girl, Nito intervenes. He easily defeats the men and knocks them out. The scared girl runs back into the cage and Nito talks to her, promising that he's not like the men who want to hurt her. He takes the little girl out of there and meets with his companions, who have also taken care of the slave merchant. The little girl introduces herself as Nemu, and says that her home is where her sister is. They conclude that she's referring to the orphanage where they look after children. Eventually, they take Nemu back to the orphanage, and the sister is overjoyed to see her back. Nemu tells the sister what happened, and to show her gratitude, she invites Nito and his companions for tea. The children, including Nemu, play in the building, while the adults talk about their encounter with the slave merchants. The sister reveals that Nemu sneaks out a lot to play with her friends. It used to be alright during better times, but slave merchandise is on the rise again in the capital, even though it's officially banned. Nemu comes into the room to play with Nito at that point, and they notice a strange mark on her left arm. When they examine it, the sister says it's called a slave crest. A slave crest is the crest of merchants that is carved into slaves as proof of slavery. It's usually for male slaves only, but is also used for the beast folk sometimes. It's intended as a mental chain that lets slaves know that they will always be slaves. According to the sister, while the crest doesn't have a special effect, those who have it eventually give up on running. Nito thinks about how cruel slave merchandise is, and he wishes he killed the slave merchant and his men when he had the chance. Sierra and Toa snap him out of his thoughts, promising to handle the rest of the case. Later that day, Sierra and Toa capture the slave merchants and bind them. They call the authorities to pick them up. It's all over, right? As they leave, Nemu is sad about Nito's departure. He promises to see her the next day and instructs her to avoid going out on her own in the meantime. Toa asks whether he truly intends to visit Nemu the next day. Nito says it's just something he had to say to console her. He observed that she played with her friends almost like nothing happened. From that, he can conclude that she might not even remember them the next day. Early the next morning, Nito Masamune is stunned to see Nemu joyfully approaching him. She says that she came to see him, and what makes it strange is that she refers to him as master. Nito can only hope this has nothing to do with the slave crest.
Nito strolls into town with Nemu, Toa, and Sierra following behind. Curious about their destination, Nemu asks where they're headed to, and Nito spills the beans. They're headed to the guild. Why? Well, he's been crashing at Sierra's place for a bit, but he feels he has overstayed his welcome and he's now ready to continue adventuring, so he's looking for a way to earn some cash. Nimue applauds him, labeling him as a true adventurer. Toa and Sierra catch Nimue calling Nito her master, and intrigued, they inquire why. Nito, a bit flustered, insists he never asked for the title, but Toa and Sierra find it fishy. Toa goes straight to Nimue for answers, who explains her mom taught her to love someone forever if they save her life. Since Nito rescued her, he's her master. Toa, satisfied with the explanation straight from Nimue, decides to go with it. During their stroll, the party unexpectedly runs into Sharon at the market. It turns out she knows Nimue, expressing surprise that Nito's crew is acquainted with her too. Nimue introduces Nito as her master, piquing Sharon's curiosity. Once inside her shop, Sharon spots the slave brand on Nimue's hand, and after Nito spills the whole story, she gets the situation. She is grateful to Nito for saving Nimue. Sharon reveals that Nimue often hangs out in her store and is like a daughter to her. She admits she wanted to punch those who harmed Nimue, expressing disbelief that the day to bid Nimue farewell is approaching. Turning to Nito, Sharon insists he shouldn't let Nimue down, since she's chosen him as her master. Half-jokingly, she warns Nito that if anything happens to Nimue, she'll rush over and give him a face punch. This leaves Nito pondering if there's a deeper meaning behind being Nimue's master. A visitor strolls into the shop, surprised to find Sierra. He mentions he's been on the lookout for her. Sierra casually calls him Edward, teasing him about maintaining a low profile. He defends his casual attire, claiming it's just his usual look. Sierra introduces her companions, and Edward, recognizing them from rumors, reveals he's Edward Scotch, one of the king's white knights. Sierra, curious, asks why he's been searching for her, and he hands her a request letter saying it's from the king. In the request letter, it is revealed that a basilisk has shown up in a town called Wick, specifically in a barn owned by a ranch owner named Boreas, who happens to be a friend of His Majesty. Nimue gets all excited and shares with Nito that she's knowledgeable about basilisks too. Sierra, curious, asks why the king specifically requested for her, and Edward explains he doesn't know. He was just ordered to hand the task over to her. He's confident the king has his own reasons for picking her. Sharon then throws in a request, mentioning that she also needs some basilisk materials, which she uses to make some of her potions. She requires tear glands, poison glands, and large fangs, as she's run out of them recently. She adds that she would really appreciate it if they would get those for her after they deal with the creature. Nito and Toa readily agree to join Sierra on this mission, and Sharon suggests bringing Nimue along. But Nito is hesitant, since he sees Nimue as a kid. Nimue feels let down that Nito wants to go without her. Nito explains they're facing a monster, and it could be risky. However, the store owner vouches for Nimue's healing skills, mentioning she might even be stronger than Nito. Reluctantly, Nito agrees to take her just this once. As they journey, Sierra vents her frustration about hunting the basilisk, feeling it could have been a task for the Adventurers Guild. Nito suggests seeing it as a favor for Sharon and wonders why Sierra is so bothered. Toa, curious about Nimue's abilities, asks if she can use magic. Nimue admits that she can't, but mentions that she can use a skill called Cat Fist. When Nito questions what a Cat Fist is, Nimue excitedly prepares to explain, only to realize that she's also not entirely sure what Cat Fist is herself. All she knows is that it's a beast art passed down to the cat folks. Sierra clarifies that beast art is a martial arts form particularly mastered by beast folks, and its specifics vary based on race. In Nimue's hometown, it's referred to as the Cat Fist. Nito concludes that this means Cat Fist isn't a form of magic, but instead more of a technique. Nimue adds that she identifies as a cat wizard, meaning if she learns about magic, she'll be able to utilize it. Cat Wizard is a class unique to the catfolk. It is an inborn class and is considered to be one of the high-rank classes. Nito asks Sierra if there are classes that aren't inborn. Sierra acknowledges that that's true, sharing her own journey from a simple knight to an elite knight. Curious, Nito wonders if he can transition from a healer to a priest, but Sierra regrets to inform him that a priest is also an inborn class, with most classes having predefined advancement paths. Unfortunately, there's no known progression for the healer class. This realization saddens Nito, realizing he might be a healer indefinitely. Nimue notices Nito's role and happily assures him of her protection. Sierra informs them that reaching Wick will take a while, as it's quite a distant journey. Nito wonders if it's right to leave the capital, and Sierra reassures him, explaining that it's the king's orders. She then shows Nito a ring, mentioning that she has informed Annette. Recalling seeing Sierra talk to her ring before, Nito asks if the ring enables communication from a distance. Sierra confirms that every king's white knight must have one. Nito reveals that he has one too, though he's never used it. He finds it convenient since it allows communication regardless of the distance. However, Sierra points out that her ring functions exclusively within the kingdom. Curious, she questions Nito about whether his ring works beyond the kingdom's borders, to which he confirms that it does. Intrigued, Sierra suggests that Nito's ring must be quite valuable, and crafted from high-quality materials. Wondering if it was a gift from a friend, She learns that it was from someone Nito just happened to meet. Nito goes on to recount his experience with the Sieg and Dragonheart organization, leaving Sierra and Toa astonished. Sierra elaborates on Dragonheart's notorious reputation for eliminating powerful figures guilty of embezzlement and murder. She notes that many countries have placed substantial bounties on the organization due to their ruthless actions. Sierra then explains the incident that happened in the Toyrant Kingdom, where the members of the Dragonheart killed not only the queen, but also anyone connected to the queen, including children. Sierra then asks Nito what he's going to do about their invitation, and Nito says he has no idea, as he doesn't know when next he will meet them. Sierra says that nowadays no one has a clue of their whereabouts, but Nito remembers that they said they were heading to Grey Belka. Coincidentally, the members of Dragonheart arrive at Grey Belka, and are being asked to halt and remove their hoods by the guards. Eliza expresses concern over encountering only 2 guards, and Alfred reassures her, suggesting the others might be engaged in battling demons. However, Alfred recalls that during his previous visit, there were more guards. Suddenly, the scenario changes as they find themselves surrounded by the kingdom's soldiers on horseback. An elderly man dismounts and orders the soldiers to step back, stating they can't face the Dragonheart. He insists on facing them alone, recognizing Alfred and expressing happiness at seeing him well. However, he scolds Alfred for associating with the Dragonheart, labeling them as scoundrels, and warns of the king's disappointment upon learning it. Alfred urges him to abandon the facade, prompting the man to question Alfred's purpose in the kingdom, as it appears he's not returning home. Sieg steps up, introduces himself, and straightforwardly informs the old man about information regarding Grey Belka engaging in forbidden magic, hero summoning, a dark practice demanding significant sacrifices. Sieg demands an immediate response, warning of severe consequences for all involved, emphasizing the potential chaos such forbidden magic can unleash upon the world. The old man promises not to let them go any further. Sieg decides to battle with the man, and Alfred warns Sieg that despite the man's appearance, he's still a sage. Sieg promises that he won't go easy on the great wizard known as the Magician of the Forest. The both of them then begin to activate their magic. The man introduces himself as Albert Morlow, and promises to put an end to Sieg's life. Following their intense battle, Sieg emerges victorious, leaving Albert Morlow severely beaten. Albert starts to suspect that Sieg might not be an ordinary human, considering how effortlessly Sieg defeated him. The idea of Sieg being a dragon crosses Albert's mind, recalling an encounter from his youth. When he questions Sieg about this, Sieg responds that he's not obligated to answer such queries. Despite Albert's attempts to emotionally manipulate Sieg into revealing the truth, Sieg dismisses him, and instead reiterates the question about Grey Belka's involvement in the hero summoning. The man confesses to it, but claims the summoning occurred a month ago, and now there's no evidence left. Sieg tells him that it doesn't matter. Just admitting there was a summoning is sufficient. Albert warns Sieg that what he's about to do isn't justice, but instead a senseless massacre. Sieg clarifies that it's not about justice or evil, but about belief, emphasizing that it has never been a matter of choosing between the two. Upon departure, Albert attempts to emotionally manipulate Alfred into reconsidering, but Alfred, familiar with his tactics, straightforwardly rejects him. He points out the country's crimes and deems them all foolish and doomed. Albert defends their actions, arguing it's necessary for humans to behave this way. In response, Albert coldly urges the man to die swiftly before departing. In his final moments, the man observes that Alfred is no longer the prince he once knew. Nito's party arrives at Wick, captivated by its bustling merchant town vibe and picturesque scenery. They acknowledge that it truly lives up to its reputation. Nemu, eager to shop, is informed by Nito that they need to visit the ranch first. Upon arriving at the ranch, they witness villagers protesting against the owner, Boreas Wick. The protesters demand that he abandon the ranch due to the basilisk threat, citing unfulfilled promises of kingdom aid. Sierra interrupts the protest, announcing her presence, and the protesters disperse, relieved that help has finally arrived. However, a suspicious, well-dressed man among them appears displeased and leaves in frustration. Nemu detects an unusual scent in the air, prompting Nito to inquire, and she reveals she senses something strange. Boreas warmly welcomes them and expresses his joy at their arrival. Sierra offers an apology for being late. Boreas, curious about their plans, inquires about when they intend to exterminate the monster. Nito proposes wrapping it up by day's end, eager to explore more of the town afterward. Boreas, well aware of the basilisks being formidable A-class monsters, raises concerns. Drawing on his past as an adventurer, he suggests a thorough investigation before taking any further action. Sierra reassures the man, mentioning that everything will be okay with Nito around. Nito notices Sierra unintentionally relying on him, even though the request was directed to her, and she also can't seem to keep his real name a secret. They agree to investigate Boreas' barn, and Boreas hands the key to Nito. Nimue then alerts the group that she senses the same odor she detected from the man with the luxurious clothes emanating from the barn. Nito suspects it might be the odor of the basilisk. Nito then expresses his suspicion to Boreas, suggesting that August might be involved in the basilisk's unexpected appearance, considering they usually dwell deep in the forest. Nito speculates that August might have some ulterior motive, possibly related to seizing Boreas' land. Nito commends Nimue for detecting the scent, making Nimue elated. They decide on a plan to drive the basilisk away without harm, aiming to relocate it back to the forest while it's unconscious. To their surprise, Nito discovers not one, but 3 basilisks when checking the barn. Sierra is taken aback because based on the request she received, there was only supposed to be 1 basilisk. The man reveals that he saw 1 the previous day, but Sierra insists that the number couldn't have increased overnight. Frustrated, Sierra expresses her dissatisfaction, prompting the man to admit that there have been 3 basilisks all along. He explains that August, who requested that he reveal the details of his request, forced him to lie, because revealing that there are 3 basilisks would lead the townspeople to take more extreme measures in making sure he leaves the ranch. Curious, Nito asks Sierra if cutting off the basilisk's heads would kill them, and she confirms it. With this information, Nito decides to change his plan and take matters into his own hands by killing the basilisks himself. He's determined to handle the situation independently. Worried, Nimue expresses concern to Nito, pointing out that as a healer, the situation is too perilous for him. However, Nito reassures her, confidently stating that it will be over immediately. As he enters the battle, Nito contemplates the limitations of his corrode skill, realizing he needs to collect materials first, and that using the skill would leave nothing behind. Opting for a different approach, Nito decides to employ his skill Godspeed Beast King style, aiming to swiftly eliminate all the basilisks at once. Surprise sweeps through everyone as Nito emerges, proudly announcing that he has defeated the basilisks. Nimue is genuinely impressed since it unfolded exactly as Nito predicted, swiftly and decisively. Nito turns to Sierra, suggesting they gather the materials Sharon needs. Toa examines the basilisks, noting that they seem harmless and probably bred. In the midst of this, August arrives, dismayed to find the basilisks already defeated, confirming Nito's suspicion of his involvement. Gordon, a man who suddenly appears behind August, asks him who amongst the victims is Boreas, so he can swiftly deal with him using his guillotine sword. Gordon, noticing the dead basilisks, erupts in anger, questioning why his pets perished. August begins accusing Nito's party of killing Gordon's basilisks. Gordon's anger escalates, and he angrily decides to go to extremes, planning to sever the limbs of both women and take them back to the inn. The fate of the remaining 3 is even grimmer. He intends to end their lives. In the midst of this chaos, August directs blame towards Boreas for refusing his offer. When Boreas asks August why he's obsessed with the land, August reveals that he dreams of constructing a grand mansion on the property, fitting for a prosperous merchant like himself. Gordon updates August, mentioning that 2 of the targets are notably strong, suggesting a double payment for dealing with them. August agrees, committing to the increased payment, but insists on paying nothing if the targets remain unharmed. Toa volunteers to confront Gordon, but he proposes the option for Sierra to take on the challenge. Sierra eagerly accepts. Both girls, Toa and Sierra, request that Nito refrain from involvement in the upcoming fight. Gordon's irritation with Nito intensifies as he expresses disdain for someone who considers it normal to be surrounded by women. Contemplating whether to deal with Nito first, Gordon's plans are abruptly interrupted when Sierra and Toa launch a sudden coordinated attack. Despite their efforts, Gordon effortlessly blocks their swords with his huge blade. Admitting they're energetic women, he playfully wonders if they're indeed eager to engage with him. With a swift motion, he forcefully thrusts them several meters back. Sierra, undeterred, promptly charges at him again, only to pull back at the last moment when she senses he's about to land a powerful kick on her. Gordon, thoroughly entertained, observes their successful defense of his attack, suspecting that one of them might be the king's White Knight. While admitting he doesn't know exactly who it is, he's confident he'll figure it out soon. His assumption stems from the fact that Boreas Wick, an old friend of King Arnold of Rashausen, is involved, and Gordon believes the king wouldn't send just any ordinary adventurer to aid his friend. Sierra counters, pointing out these are mere assumptions. As Sierra persists in her attacks, Gordon skillfully evades each move. Finally, he manages to seize her sword and remarks as if realizing something profound. He then tells her he knows that she is the White Knight. Sierra, who is actually taking on the role of a decoy, suddenly screams Toa's name, prompting Toa to launch a powerful lightning strike at Gordon. Despite surviving the lightning assault, Gordon activates his skill Berserk, leaving Sierra visibly shaken as she recognizes it as dark attribute magic. Gordon, addressing Sierra as a King's White Knight, addresses the potency of the skill, emphasizing that it won't work against him anymore in his new form. Nito comments on the ominous appearance of the magic, but Gordon dismisses him, claiming he's currently occupied with the women. Undeterred, Sierra chooses to confront Gordon directly, ignoring the warning. To her surprise, when her sword makes contact with Gordon's body, it encounters an unexpected level of toughness, resulting in her sword breaking in two. In a state of shock, Gordon seizes the opportunity and sends Sierra flying with a powerful punch, propelling her until she collides with a nearby tree. He points out that she seems unaware of magic, explaining that when he's in this state, he's immune to both physical and magical attacks. Just as Gordon is about to deliver a finishing blow with his sword, Toa, sneaking up from behind, skillfully employs the combination of her two abilities, Lightning Soul and Lightning Phase. These allow her to bypass Gordon's tough skin and slash his neck with her sword. Gordon collapses immediately. Toa, extending a helping hand to Sierra, suggests she think of it as a token of gratitude for letting her stay at her place. Their relation takes an abrupt turn when Gordon unexpectedly revives, his wounds healing almost instantly, reminding them of his earlier disclosure about being invincible in that state. Gordon reveals that resurrection is the true identity of the Berserk magic. With a swift activation of his cursed javelin magic, he nearly uses the javelin to simultaneously attack both girls. In the nick of time, Nito intervenes, successfully blocking the attack, causing Gordon to immediately explode, leaving only a fragment of his hand behind. August, astonished by Gordon's defeat, is questioned by Nito about whether he desires a similar fate. Turning to Boreas for guidance, Nito seeks Boreas' decision on what should be done with August, pledging to follow whatever course of action Boreas deems fit. In a hurried plea, August rushes towards Boreas, desperately begging for his life and vowing never to repeat his actions. Boreas, standing firm, explains that the land is an ancestral inheritance, making it impossible for him to sell it to someone seeking personal gain. Despite this, Boreas offers a lifeline, promising to spare August's life on the condition that he leave the land untouched. August, relieved, swiftly agrees and departs. Once the tense situation is resolved, Boreas assists them in gathering all the necessary materials. Apologizing for not being able to provide more substantial compensation due to his limited wealth, Boreas makes amends by offering some Stein meat he personally bred, and luxurious Yoastein parts as a token of gratitude. Nito expresses gratitude for the thoughtful gift from Boreas, thanking him sincerely. In response, Boreas expresses his appreciation once more, assuring them that he will treasure the ranch with all his heart. As the group departs from the ranch, the girls curiously inquire about Nito's sudden improvement in swordsmanship. They recall teaching him at home, noticing a lack of proper footwork, yet witnessing a masterful display when he confronted the basilisk. Nito shares that he possessed these sword skills from the beginning, but finds it challenging to explain. Sierra, demonstrating trust and belief in Nito, acknowledges that he may have personal reasons for his abilities. With a newfound understanding, the group collectively decides to indulge in some city shopping, embracing the camaraderie and trust that binds them. It seems Toa can't keep her eyes off the prize, literally. She keeps staring at the heavy load of meat they won for defeating the basilisk back at the ranch. Nemu teases her about it, but she denies it flat out, and retorts that Nemu is being a creep. Nemu counters she has her mind preoccupied with other things, actually, like a necklace she's just spotted. The vendor catches Nemu's excitement and asks her if she admires the necklace, because if she does, she has a good eye. It has a crystal stone from Parstella, but the country has ceased to exist. So if Nemu really likes the necklace, then it's best she gets it now before the crystals go extinct. Sierra notes that the crystals collected from Parstella are quite popular. The color is blue now, but if worn for a long period of time, it would react to the owner's magic power and change color. In fact, it's a rather interesting stone. Depending on the quality of the owner's magic power, the crystal's purity would also change. The color it changes to is an anticipation and mystery the owner of the necklace should look forward to. It's worth 3,000 Rion, and Nito decides he'll buy 3 of them, one for each of his companions. How generous. Nemu accepts hers excitedly, and Toa wants the honor of Nito putting hers around her neck. But maybe instead she just really wants the opportunity to flirt and steal a moment with her crush. However, the moment with Toa is so awkward. He acts funny in return, going red and jumpy and asking Sierra if she would also like the same gesture as Toa. Sierra responds she'll wear her necklace by herself, as she too has noticed the change in atmosphere. Moving on, they come across what seems to be a bar and they decide to check it out. It is lined up with shelves of various liquor. An attendant approaches them asking if they need any sort of assistance. Nito declines, and the attendants suggest they buy something he personally recommends. It's quite a pricey store. It is then that Nito notices a poster on the wall. The attendant follows his attention and lets him know the particular drink advertised on the poster is out of stock. It's called the Old Gert, an old wine normally referred to as a phantom wine. The fact that Nito doesn't seem to recognize the wine surprises the attendant. He goes on to explain that the wine is no longer in production as far as the world is concerned. Nito, however, can't help but recall seeing it somewhere. He thinks back and remembers it was the wine he drank while in a state of depression that led to his suicide in the other world. He brings out the bottle from under his cloak and wants to clarify if it's truly the same wine. The attendant is no less than astonished and asks to inspect the bottle. It has to be a fake. The attendant says this because there is no way anyone should have access to the original. Nito offers for the attendant to have a taste if he likes. He does, and it's an even bigger shock for him because it's the real deal. The attendant goes down memory lane, telling them of a time that he secretly went to his father's study room to take sips from his father's old Gert. It's been a while, but he can't forget the taste. What Nito has is a genuine old Gert, and now the question is, where did he get it from? Nito answers that he got it from a dungeon. The attendant then makes an offer to them, 10 million rion for the bottle. And there's more. They can have the other sakes in the store, whatever they want is theirs. Nito asks the man to calm down. It all sounds like too much to give for just a bottle. The attendant is kind enough to explain it to them. 10 million rions doesn't even come close to the actual worth of the bottle. It's a wine no longer in production, so wine lovers would pay heavily for it. Nobles bid on it for a range of 100 million rions to 1 billion. To think Nito was drinking such a high-class wine. The attendant offers them 30 million rions on the spot, which he claims is what he has on him. But on the other hand, he tells them that he has connections. He could sell it to a noble for 1 billion rion and give them half. If only the attendant knew that Nito still has 100 of those bottles in his spatial storage. Nito comes to a conclusion. He'll sell the bottle for 30 million, but will also collect half of the selling price later once it's sold to the noble. The attendant quickly hurries away and comes back with cash he has withdrawn from the bank. 30 million in total. Nito is just surprised to know that banks exist in this world. And just like that, they are millionaires. Conversations lead to the revelation that Sierra knows about the old Gert as her father owns a vineyard. The attendant asks her if she's a member of the Eckerlat family, which she confirms. With so much money on their hands, Nito offers to buy Sierra a new rapier as her old one has broken. He would also like to go shopping for some new clothes for both him and Nimue. Sierra remembers Nito has a serpent sword that he also found in a dungeon. Dungeon items are mostly unknown items, where swords like the legend grade or a mythological grade or a fantasy grade can be found. Weapons, consumables, and other monster materials are all divided into grades depending on their value. The lowest rank is common grade and the highest is fantasy. The attendant advises Nito to appraise his sword and know the value, and offers to take them to a store where they can get that done. Nito recalls that the sword originally belongs to Sha'on, so it must be a high-grade sword. They arrive at a store called KK Toy, a general store built by the major company KK Group. The store specializes in magic equipment. The attendant advised that it was wiser that anyone thought the sword belonged to him, so he is the one to present it on the counter and ask that it's appraised. While he waits for the results of the value of the sword, he tells Nito and his crew they can go ahead and look around. Nito announces he'll check up on Nimue, who seems to have run off like little children do. He tells Sierra that this is the opportunity for her to check around for a replacement for her broken rapier. Sierra debated whether Nito should really go to that length for her, and if so, what would be her repayment. He basically tells her to stop fussing about a repayment, and consider him buying her a new rapier as rent payment for staying at her place. Sierra decides it's a fair trade and lets it be. While they're looking around, Toa mentions she wouldn't mind having some light armor. She is shown some by a shop attendant. The armor is in a glass case and initially appears heavy to Toa. On the contrary, it's lightweight and made from wyvern scales, a quality of rare grade that piques Nito's interest. Nito then spots a room that grabs his interest, and he questions the attendant about it. He's told it's a national treasure grade room for customers with a high budget. When the attendant learns that dear Nito has 10 million rions in cash, it's a surprise she doesn't roll out a red carpet on his behalf. Toa tells Nito he shouldn't go spending all that money right away. He doesn't need to get her anything, but he counters that high-grade armor is a smart move if they can afford it. Plus, money comes and goes. It's used to earn more during requests. They come across a weapon called Angel's Protective Raiment. A high-ranked alchemist made it with a combination of national treasure-grade fabrics and minerals. It sounds nicer than the armor they saw earlier. It costs 1.5 million, but Nito is ready to go all out for his pals. As Toa is led away to try on her new gear, Nimue appears at Nito's side. Realizing the need for armor, Nito approaches an attendant and inquires about acquiring protective gear for Nimue, especially since the other girls have already been taken care of. The attendant presents a unique piece, a mithril armor crafted by a high-ranking elven alchemist and a skilled seamstress. This particular armor boasts a thin, flexible layer of mithril, designed to be worn underneath other attire. Its distinctive feature is the stretched magic applied to accommodate changes in the wearer's height. ensuring it remains suitable even if Nimue were to grow taller. The price tag of 2 million rions raises eyebrows, but Nito, concerned primarily with its functionality, deems it worth the investment for the job it's intended to do. Toa reemerges with her new gear, which has been paired with a new outfit too. Nito is so stunned he starts to blush, but he's able to catch himself. It looks good on her, he has to admit. And the new outfit was a bonus from the staff. How nice. Nimue also gets a bonus outfit designed for catfolk. It has a hood that accommodates her ears, and she looks more than happy in it. Sierra finds a rapier that catches her attention. The rapier is said to be forged from a unicorn horn found in Arda. It's an ice rapier of high quality and goes for 5 million rion. It's a core ice attribute, not an element, and would be suited well for Sierra, who uses ice magic. Sierra clearly wants the sword against her protest that it's too expensive, so Nito goes ahead and buys it for her. The attendant from the bar comes back with the sword and lets Nito know that he is the owner of a mythology-grade sword. It's ultra rare, as people don't even believe mythology-grade items exist, explaining why they're called mythology-grade in the first place. Nito ultimately decides to give the serpent sword to Toa. He expresses he has no use for it as he's a healer, and so the sword is not well suited for him. Toa then trades the sword she previously had with Nito, so it's a fairer deal. The attendant teases Nito about having such a big heart, as he's giving off such a precious item. Inwardly, Nito feels it's all worth it. Before now, he has felt so alone. But now that he has the companionship of 3 lovely people, he can say with confidence that things have changed. In a somber turn of events, news reaches the king of the forced magician Albert Marlowe's death. The monarch, deeply affected by the loss, organizes a memorial to honor his dear friend. Albert Marlowe was not only a skilled forced magician, but also a trusted advisor, who dedicated his wisdom and talent to support the king and the country for a significant period. As the kingdom gathers to pay respects and commemorate Albert's contributions, the air is heavy with the weight of loss. In a somber address to the gathered crowd, the king reveals the tragic news of Albert's death, attributing it to the dragon's heart. He solemnly promises to personally put an end to the organization that has long threatened their country, vowing retribution for his late friend. Meanwhile, at Grey Belka's academy training ground, Ares delivers the heart-wrenching news of Albert's demise to her students. She recounts that in response to the reports of Dragon's Heart members at the border, Albert took it upon himself to investigate. It was in the line of duty that he met his untimely end, casting a shadow over the academy and leaving his fellow students grappling with the weight of his loss. Ares, with tears in her eyes, asks the students to carry on Albert's will. Students speak up about various instances of when Albert was nice and kind to them. This is why they will happily carry on Albert's will as asked. Albert's will was to defeat the Demon Lord and bring peace to the world, and that is the philosophy that the Academy upholds. Ares reminds the students that they are the hope of the country, and pleads with them to lend their strength. While everyone goes on to train hard, Ichijo is confronted by Saiki, who asks him why he's lounging by a tree when everyone is training hard after Ares' appeal. Ichijo replies that he's aware of the situation, but that doesn't mean he can't observe break time. The body needs rest too. He also goes on to confront the gang that has now formed against him for always picking on him. He thinks out loud that this is how Nito must have felt as well. Saiki's anger flares, and he vehemently demands that Ichijo cease speaking ill of the deceased. The tension in the room is palpable, but Ichijo, unyielding, counters by suggesting that the same rules of respect should apply to Albert, the catalyst for the current upheaval. Ichijo then takes the conversation into deeper waters, challenging the sincerity of Ares' words. He insinuates that Ares might have a hidden agenda, alleging that she manipulates emotions by using impactful events like the Great Sage's death. According to Ichijo, Ares employs a strategy of discussing distressing matters, such as soldiers perishing at the hands of demons, to emotionally manipulate students into intensifying their training efforts. To him, this tactic amounts to a form of brainwashing, casting doubt on Ares' intentions and methods. A watchful sensei interrupts the boys' conversation, inquiring about the nature of their discussion, and half-jokingly suggesting it's their usual bickering. Quick on their feet, they offer a white lie, claiming they were actually discussing strategies. The sensei, with a reassuring pat on Saiki's back, expresses confidence in him, stating they are counting on his leadership. Once the sensei departs, the atmosphere shifts abruptly. Ichijo, ever the provocateur, taunts Saiki for what he perceives as emotional vulnerability. The temptation to retaliate physically simmers with Saiki, but he exercises restraint. Defiantly, Saiki declares that he couldn't care less about Ichijo's opinion, and boldly asserts his decision to not report the act of rebellion. Two girls jump in on the conversation, easily taking Saiki's side. Inchijo then activates an explosion skill and calls the girls out for constantly picking sides and following a leader like a shadow. So much so that they're hiding behind this leader with the faux courage to talk smart because they think they're on the winning team. In general, Inchijo can see Nito having been on the receiving end of such cruelty, and the whole thing makes him sick and tired. Saiki calls Inchijo a coward for using magic to try and threaten them. He gets physical with Inchijo and threatens back that Inchijo better take some time and think about who is really on the wrong side of things. Saiki and his minions take their leave, and Inchijo can't believe that no one else can see through the facade. Ares was the same one who threw Nito out with no remorse. It makes him believe that all the students here are just pawns for convenience, and when they become inconvenient, they can easily be disposed of, thrown out, or maybe killed. What's more is his strong belief that Nito is still somewhere alive and well. At Razhausen, Sharon is shocked to see that Nito and his companions have successfully hunted and defeated 3 basilisks, as one on its own is extremely dangerous. In a clandestine exchange, Nito, having previously instructed Nimue to keep their role in defeating the basilisks a secret, now questions Sharon about the materials she requested. Sharon, with an air of mystery, reveals her ambitious plan to concoct a wondrous drug. However, her true agenda catches both Nito and Nimue by surprise. Sharon discloses that the primary purpose of the drug is to erase Nimue's slave crest, a revelation that stirs shock in Nito. The notion that a slave crest, typically considered an indelible mark, can be erased is news to him. Sharon hints that this crucial detail is not widely known, as the drug's primary use remains shrouded in secrecy. Sharon warns Nimue that the process will hurt a bit, giving her a heads up to brace herself. She also tells Nito to be ready to cast healing magic when needed. Sharon then rolls Nimue's sleeve to reveal the crest on her arm, on which she begins pouring the wondrous drug. Nimue confirms that it indeed hurts. Once the crest dissolves, Nito conducts Effect Heal, and Nimue confirms she's no longer dizzy and in pain. Good to hear. Toa expresses her thoughts on how she thought the wondrous drug was a hardening potion, and Sharon explains that if the poison dosage is increased when compounding the ingredients, it becomes a crest eraser. It causes severe pain because it melts the top layer of the skin. Sharon goes on to comment on Nito's healing skills, saying it's the first time she's seen a heal spell heal that fast, and an Effect Heal cure fatigue. Sierra is also surprised, as she thought that Nito was only accustomed to enchant magic. Stereotypically, healers are not expected to know more than enchant and healing magic. That's why healers are tagged the weakest link. Nito is, however, different and no ordinary healer. He can use enchant magic that increases attack and defense, aka Odium Aura, an advanced magic spell. Continuing under the alias Nito, Hidako experiences a swift ascent within the adventurer ranks, achieving the impressive milestone of being promoted to a B rank shortly after the successful defeat of the basilisks. To add to the surprise, Toa secures her own promotion to a C rank in the span of just a few days, leaving both of them in a state of astonishment. Even the Guildmaster acknowledges their exceptional talent, a recognition that sets their promotions apart. The rarity of such rapid advancements becomes evident, as the norm dictates a gradual climb, with it typically taking a year for an adventurer to ascend one rank. Hidako's remarkable jump from F to B rank within such a short time frame defies conventional expectations, leading to speculation about the extraordinary circumstances that facilitated this meteoric rise. The Guildmaster's decision hints at the exceptional nature of Hidako's achievements. Sierra isn't left out, she too gets a recognition, a reward for subjugating the Newt Kalain. On hearing this, Hidako starts to panic if this is the true reason behind his promotion. The White Knights must have figured out that he's using Nito as an alias. They must be aware of his true identity. While Hidako is in panic mode, some pest of a man shows up trying to bully him. It's a pest Hidako has met previously, sadly. Sierra excuses herself from the scene, stating she just got a call from Annette. She's been summoned to the headquarters for a meeting. The man continues to try and cause a ruckus, and Nimue lays a cat punch across his face. The punch sends the man flying across the room. Turns out he's a drunk, but on the bright side, he's quieted down. Hidako momentarily ponders on Nimue's punch and concludes she's much stronger than healers. It makes Hidako question her about why she didn't think to use such power when she was captured by slaves. Nimue responds that she didn't feel as strong. Toa reasons that it's possible she inhaled a catnip at the time, and that would explain her dizziness. She knows this because back at the castle, she had a cat maid who told her that the cat tribe could act drunk when exposed to catnip, although with time they get immune to the smell with training. But Nimue can't confirm if she's had any such training. At Razhausen Castle, in the meeting room of the White Knights, Sierra steps in apologizing for being late. Present are the White King's Knights' 2nd to 6th seat. Sierra is seat 7. One of the knights reveals they plan to monitor Hidako. The king knew in advance what was happening in Wick, but that was not the point of the meeting. Reinhardt reveals the Dragon's Heart have appeared in Grey Belka. Hearing this, Sierra struggles as a white knight to reveal that Hidako is being recruited to join the Dragon's Heart. But back to the main discussion. In Grey Belka, a forbidden hero summoning was carried out. Raid Black is quite excited about hearing about the hero summoning, as he exclaims that the ritualists have finally done the worst. Intuitively, he links the appearance of the Dragon's Heart in Grey Belka to the summoning ritual. To the fear of most of the Knights of the White Knight, the summoning is sure to bring chaos. Reinhard Rickman, the second-seat Knight of the White King, confirms their fear by disclosing that there was already a casualty from the summoning ritual, the death of the forced magician Albert Morlow. Edward Scotch, one of the seated knights present, recognizes the name as an outstanding magician that was one of the most dangerous magicians to the Old Empire in the war times a long time ago. Raid, enjoying the chaos unfolding, adds that considering the Toyrant Kingdom incident, the enemies would definitely have other plans after killing Albert Morlow. There is definitely more besides taking out one magician, even though the magician is one that powerfully stood in their path. Meanwhile, the whole discussion left Sierra clueless as she had no idea what a hero summoning ritual was. The ignorance surprises Raid at first, but given that the information is vital and critical as this is usually kept from the public, he takes on the responsibility of explaining the requirements and purpose of the ritual. He explains that hero summoning is a type of summoning magic. However, it is completely different from the summoning magic the masses are familiar with. It is a magic spell that summons heroes from another world. Pretty straightforward. Sierra, trying to understand the context of heroes, asks if the heroes are similar to the ones mentioned in fairy tales. Raid appreciates that she has an idea but points out that she isn't entirely correct. Heroes is just the general term for any being that has been summoned, usually humans. According to old records, there's been an occurrence in history where a beast was summoned, and it couldn't communicate like normal heroes would be able to. Usually, the hero summoned obtained divine protection called a blessing. They sometimes have abnormally high status and are equipped with knowledge of advanced magic spells, which is rare to come across, not to mention using them. Some of these heroes have amazing classes with unique skills from the get-go. Soon enough, they get to the curious and hidden part: why the magic is considered forbidden. As a reply to Sierra's curious question, Reinhard Rickman answers that the summoning is forbidden because it requires human sacrifice. To cast the hero summoning spell, the casters need an enormous amount of magic power, which means they need to access the magic power core. Sierra then asks why there's a need to use humans if the requirement is the magic power core, as other creatures possess a core like this as well. As Raid mentioned earlier, Reinhardt reminded her that there was once a time when a beast was summoned and caused a lot of casualties. That occurrence happened as a result of using beasts as a sacrifice. The summoning resulted in a creature that could not communicate or even have a sense of reasoning, leading to the brutal end. In order to not repeat the same tragedy, only humans are used for the ritual, since that past happening. Unfortunately, the scary part of the whole thing isn't the sacrifices. It is the fact that to access the magic power core in its full use, the casters have to drown the sacrifices in terror and despair. Naturally, the core is in a restrained state, as it is designed to supply just enough power so the host's body does not break. The necessary amount of magic power cannot be easily gathered from just sacrificing them, as limitations reduce the power used for the ritual. The core's limitation has to be removed, and the quickest way to do this is torture. The sacrifices are plunged into terror with pain till they are left paralyzed, torturing them just not enough to kill them, because if a sacrifice dies, the core dies along with them. When the bodies are crippled and minds are broken, the limitations are lifted, causing the bodies to emit light and enormous energy, activating the hero's summoning. Sierra, trying to understand how many humans have to go through that pain, asks the required number of sacrifices for a hero summoning, but sadly, no one holds an accurate figure of that. Raid estimates that it could be hundreds or thousands of humans. In the past, a hero summoning was conducted, and all the humans in a country vanished into thin air suspiciously. Sierra is left terrified of this new knowledge, as the realization sinks in that such pain and loss has already been inflicted, leading to a loss of a lot of lives. Reinhard Rickman rounds up the conversation on the hero summoning, asking them to keep in mind that even if the Dragon's Heart didn't cause further harm to Grey Belka, they plan to wage war against demons. He also asks if any of the knights seated have other matters to report, so the meeting can progress. Daniel King, one of the second-seat knights, reports the theft of the corpse of the Newt Kalain carried out by an anonymous individual. Later on, Nito prepares to host a barbecue, something they haven't had in a while. The Eclarat sisters, Hilda and Sierra, used to have a lot of barbecues before, so hosting one brings back a lot of nostalgia, even for the staff. Nito invites the staff and other employees of the Eclarat to join the barbecue since there's a lot of meat. The staff modestly accepts the offer but is still doubtful that the meat would suffice for everyone, being that the maids only make up a number of 15 people. Nito reassures him that there's enough. The Volstein meat he bought earlier and the Yoastein meat he received during a quest should be enough for the whole house, staff included. Nito explains that this is a way of him repaying the kindness they have showered him with during his stay in the house. Everyone is called for the barbecue party and Nito supplies them with barrels of wine, assuring that he still has plenty left. The staff brags about running a vineyard, being nosy when it comes to wine, and praises the barrel Nito provided. To his shock, it is a rare brand of wine, Old Gert. And now the party gets going and everyone is having a blast, when it's brought to Nito's attention that Sierra seems down given the event. Curious, Nito sits beside her and asks her what causes her mood. She asks if he knows about hero summoning, which came as a shock to Nito. He affirms that he does know about it. Sierra asks further if he's aware of the reason the spell is considered forbidden. Nito calmly answers, which surprises Sierra that he could be calm about it despite knowing. She relays what she learned at the meeting to him, leaving Nito in shock as he wasn't aware that torture is the cruel yet grand part of the ritual. Despite this being a necessary knowledge for the Knights of the White King, it upsets Sierra as it left her feeling scared of magic and running away from the truth, as she wants to forget that such a magic exists. Nito encourages her, assuring her that not all magic requires sacrifices, so she shouldn't worry about it. If there is magic that can protect people, there's definitely bound to be magic that can harm people. The important part is how the magic is used. Nito adds that if she still feels uneasy about it, she could always talk to those she had around her, which meant himself, Toa, Nemu, and her sister Hilda. He promises to stay by her side till she feels better. Sierra feels at ease and hugs him, asking him to call her by her name without titles when they exchange pleasantries, as friends would. Nemu sees Sierra hugging Nito and hurries towards the pair in jealousy. She then confronts Sierra for flirting with her master, Nito. Exclaiming that it is unfair, she hugs Nito, separating him from Sierra. Sierra shyly denies flirting with Nito, even when Nemu adds that she saw Sierra hug Nito, and even Toa did as well. Toa calmly approaches the group and expresses that she's glad to see Sierra in a better mood. Nito then explains to Nemu that Sierra wasn't flirting with him or being unfair. She just needed a sense of ease. Nemu is still persistent and perceptive, as she also noticed that he called Sierra by just her name. After the drama blows over, Toa is briefed on what Sierra had learned and also wonders how problematic it is that such magic exists, adding that it is the first time she's hearing of it. Nito curiously asks why the hero summoning was brought up in the meeting. Sierra explains that the public would soon hear about the ritual, the forbidden magic being performed in Grey Belka. Due to how calmly Nito is acting, Sierra suspects he knows something more about the happening and asks. Nito, due to pressure, discloses that he heard it from the members of the Dragon's Heart as they were leaving. He continues informing them that Grey Belka was conducting a hero summoning, and the Dragonheart were going to ascertain the truth. Feeling something is left out, Sierra asks if there's any more kept hidden. Nito anxiously questions if Sierra has realized his secret, but realizes it is for the best to tell her since he's been doing unfathomable things in front of her. One of the heroes summoned into their world is Nito, also known as Masamune, and he has kept this hidden from them for a while. He finally reveals this information to Sierra, and she starts connecting the dots. Based on the information she learned from Raid Black, she understands why he knows little of their world, and he has abnormal abilities just as Raid mentioned and obviously has a blessing. Nito corrects one thing in her deduction, the fact that he isn't actively a hero even if he was summoned to their world. Nito explains that he was discarded because he is a healer, the lowest class. He also adds that he's happy it happened because he got to meet the three of them. Sierra, still trying to process all that she has just heard, asks that if he was discarded, it must mean that there were other heroes summoned and stronger ones too. Nito confirms it, adding that they have advanced classes. Toa disagrees, stating that the other heroes are not stronger than Nito even though they should normally be. This leaves Nemu and Sierra confused, solely because they haven't seen Nito's real status. When he shows it to them, they are astounded by how high his level is, and now they understand what Toa meant. Later on, Nito encounters Hilda, as she approaches him to express that she is glad he's by Sierra's side. She added that everyone was happy that Sierra finally had a friend. She proceeds to ask him to take Sierra with him when he plans to leave the country. After ushering in that request, she bids him goodnight and retires to bed. Soon enough, Nito pulls out the magic tool Dragon Crystal Ring, which connects him to a Dragonheart member. When he wears the ring on his finger, the connection to them is secure and the communication began. Nito informs the member that he heard that they attacked Grey Belka, and he thought they would go about it more peacefully, but they didn't. Given where Nito is, it meant that the news has spread far and fast. Getting straight to the point, he asks for Nito's help in facing King Johans and Princess Ares, who are the masterminds behind the hero summoning. Since the member has used up most of his magical power fighting off the forced magician Albert, he would have trouble going through with the next mission without Nito's help, this being the only chance they have to stop Grey Belka from waging war in the near future. Nito agrees to help them just this once, but also points out that he isn't their ally. The only reason he would help them is because his objective coincides with theirs. Nito has a grudge against the king and princess of Grey Belka and is determined to kill both. They will also not harm the summoned, as the summoned are innocent. Since both parties have an agreement, they decide on where to meet. Using the ring by wearing it on the middle finger and chanting trans code with the hand in front of your heart will trigger the teleportation feature. Although Nito can transfer to their location almost instantly, the dragon heart instructs him to wait for their go-ahead. As he leaves the room to go and prepare, he bumps into Toa, who overheard the entire conversation on the ring. Toa asks him who he was talking to, and since she caught him red-handed, he had no other choice than to come clean and fess up. He told her that he was talking with the dragon heart. Hearing this, Toa knew what it entailed, and tried her best to dissuade Nito from going back to Grey Belka. Going back to Grey Belka was a decision Nito had made a long while ago, and he was planning to go at some point. It just so happened that now was that point in time, because if he doesn't go back, he can't get his revenge, and will forever be a coward. Even when Toa points out that he isn't going back to do a good thing, but something evil, something a lot of people would not accept, Nito is still determined, as he can't move forward unless he heads back to Grey Belka. Toa strongly disagrees with his ideas, because she herself was rejected by a lot of people in Grey Belka, and the truth is, she's scared to go there. Seeing that Nito is determined to get back there, she decides to tell him something he didn't know as a last attempt to persuade him. Back home, she was always alone and lonely, and she distracted herself by entering the treasure room and playing with the treasure. One day she found a mirror, and in the mirror that felt nostalgic, she saw an image of a man suddenly appear. The person was the same as her, alone and walking in darkness by himself. Every time the mirror showed him, he was hurt and bleeding, but he didn't stop walking. No matter how hurt or dark it was, he kept on going. He was a strong person. This story confused Nito, till he realized that the person she was talking about was him. She confirms that she has always been watching him from when he was adventuring alone. When the mirror stopped showing him, she stood in front of the mirror hoping to see him again, and she didn't. About to give up, a magic spell suddenly activated and pulled her in. Upon realization, she found herself in the forest and soon got caught by bandits. Fortunately, she was rescued by Nito, which Toa thinks is not a coincidence, but fate. Hearing this story made Nito understand her attitude towards him since they met, and he now sees the reason after the story. Nito in turn explains to Toa that the reason he kept on walking forward was because he was filled with strong hatred, with goals to eliminate the country of Grey Belka and those who betrayed him. Now that he has explained his reason, she agrees to not scorn or show him disdain. Almost immediately, the go-ahead from the dragon's heart comes in and they bid each other goodbye. Toa promises to let Sierra and Nemu know, assuring that they will understand. Nito appears at the location of the Dragon's Heart, which is a nearby town, because after the death of Albert, the capital's security increased. Nito deduces that this meant the situation isn't good, since there were a lot of guards. Luckily, when they infiltrated the first time, they put a teleportation mark, and all they need to do is activate the mark. Since there's no Albert, the sensory barrier isn't activated, so they can easily gain access. But before they left, the Dragon's Heart Sieg asks if Nito is really capable of killing Johans and Ares, these two being two powerful figures, despite the fact that they currently sit on the throne. The king, Johans, is a former S-rank adventurer and an earth magician, while Ares is a user of teleportation magic and a renowned assassin, known as the Witch of Decapitation. And besides these two, there's another thing to worry about: the war with the demons that Grey Belka wages. Demons have high magic power, and the country has held on for quite a while, which means that the country has other strong adventurers as well, like Lola the Sword Piercer and Silent Zaru. Fighting Johans and Ares will come after defeating those two. If Nito cannot kill them all, they will lose their goal. Since Sieg is confident to win a 1v1 against these mentioned adventurers at his best condition, Nito is determined and encouraged that he can defeat them all. They swiftly and quietly head into the city, but soon meet resistance. With so many guards in their way, they would be in a really bad place if reinforcements came. So they take out the communicator and swiftly take out the guards in front of them. With this duo, Sieg and Nito, wielding their weapons and magic tools, the other two grew more sure of taking down Grey Belka. Meanwhile, at the Eclorats, Toa heads in to tell the others of Nito's whereabouts, but Sierra was awake during the entire conversation and heard what had transpired. Nemu wonders if Nito will come back and continue adventuring with them. Toa, despite feeling pathetic because she told Nito she believes in him, assures the rest that Nito will definitely come back. She encourages them that this time they have to save Nito, who's in pain, and assures that he will come back to them with some certainty and hope. At Grey Belka, the squad has successfully infiltrated the kingdom and taken out two knights, Bernard and Mike, both the knights working under Ares, and known as the Strong Two of Grey Belka. given the title because they fought the Demon Lord's army and returned alive. Since they knocked these men down, the skills Exploding Fist and the Goddess's Blessing were unlocked and learned. Wondering why Grey Belka is waging war against demons, Alfred explains that it is all Johann's will. His first wife passed away from illness and the second from assassination, and immediately he started becoming weird. He began his war against demons, and no matter how many casualties occurred, he continued the war, saying he was proud to sacrifice his life for his own sake. Nito, listening carefully, wonders how Alfred knows so much. Soon enough, Alfred is recognized by one of the knights and greeted with disdain, as the knight did not appreciate him joining the Dragon's Heart, and as far as not wanting to believe it till he saw it with his own eyes. Next, the Dragon's Heart gets surrounded, and the leading knight politely asks that they surrender, adding that he would not want to point his blade at his prince. Turns out Alfred's the son of Johann's second wife, a prince of the country, Alfred Grey Belka. Alfred tries to talk some sense into the knight, highlighting the fact that the country isn't normal anymore, but the knights are shrouded in a strong sense of patriotism, even though it's in the wrong direction. They continue fighting for the sake of their friends and family on the false prospects that they will someday experience peace. Alfred clearly sees that this cannot be achieved when Ares and Johannes are ruling the country. Even if these ones go, their successors will repeat the same mistakes. For Alfred, the country is corrupt to its core. The knights refuse to back down, giving the excuse of being average soldiers for not trying to change Grey Belka. The conversation isn't going anywhere, so Nito asks if Eliza could use defense-type magic. Confirming that she could conjure a water attribute defense magic, he asks her to conjure one when he gives a signal. A ferocious exchange begins as Nito gives the signal and uses a skill, Goddess's Bloody Tears. He attacks the knights while Alfred and Sieg cut some of them down. The goddess tears melt anything they touch, and the barrier put up by Eliza kept the knights in a tight corner, with little to no means to avoid the tears. With abyss magic, the knights are all cleared, leaving bloody trails. Sieg instructs that they move quickly and specifically asks Nito to kill anyone they meet. The king wonders why the Dragon's Heart squad hasn't been caught. Ares has a different worry, which is how did the Dragon's Heart find out about the summoning? A spy comes in to report sightings of 4 people said to be the Dragon's Heart. 2 men being Sieg and Alfred, a hooded person that's unidentifiable, and a woman, Eliza of the wet-haired. The spy reports that the hooded individual is called Nito. Hearing the casualties Grey Belka has suffered, a knight, Philip Butler, offers to face them. Another knight, Grog, asks Eri to deploy him, as he cannot let his junior go alone, and assures that they will bring good results. After Philip Butler and Grog demonstrate their courage by volunteering to stop Nito and his Dragonheart companions, all that remains is to walk the walk. During their preparations, Grog asks Philip how long he's had a thing for Princess Ares. Philip has no choice but to open up, so he reveals that he's had a crush on the princess for a while, dating back to his years as a student. Grog wonders why he never confessed to Ares, so Philip reminds him that he and the princess are from 2 different worlds. While she's royalty and only meant for nobles, he's just a commoner. Grog tells his companion the story of a princess from another country who got married to a commoner. According to Grog, the princess was the one who confessed her feelings to the commoner in this scenario. The story seems to make Philip hopeful again, and he even thinks about confessing his feelings to Princess Ares if he survives his current mission. Grog wants Philip to remain upbeat and urges him not to think about dying on the mission. Their small talk finally leads them to their destination. Right now, just one door separates them from Nito and his companions. Meanwhile, Nito's group can tell that there's opposition just outside the door. Thankfully, they haven't come to the castle unprepared. Alfred steps up and asks to be allowed to deal with the guards outside. He summons Excalibur, a weapon only heroes can summon, and Nito admires the fancy sword. He recalls Ichijo's words about being different kinds of heroes from the rest of them, so he deduces that Alfred and Ichijo are the same kind of hero. Philip and Grog come in to meet Alfred, Nito, and the rest of the Dragonheart. Philip is greatly surprised by Alfred's presence, and even more by the people he seems to have as companions. Alfred immediately shushes him, saying that he's well aware that he's not truly respected. Alfred also makes the surprising first move by going after Grog, fatally cutting him with his lethal weapon. Grog has no time to react and fails to block Alfred's move. Grog's lifeless body drops to the ground, leaving his living partner trembling. Alfred notices Philip's fear and questions why someone like him would be stationed as a guard in the castle. Alfred condescendingly notes that the standards of the soldiers has dropped since he left. Almost like he's been fueled by Alfred's words, Philip picks up his sword and casts the attribute enhancement to buff up his powers. He sends a couple of strokes at Alfred, however, Alfred stays alert and skillfully dodges his sword attack. Philip must have a lot of adrenaline pumping through his blood right now, and he chants Ares' name as he delivers his next series of blows. The fight between Philip and Alfred ends just as quickly as it began. While Philip gives his all, it's nothing more than a warm-up for Alfred. In a matter of minutes, Alfred takes the battle to game, set, and match. effectively ending Philip's fighting chances by savagely taking off his left arm. With nowhere to go and just one arm to live with, Philip can tell that it's already a lost battle. Alfred has Philip at sword point already, so he can spare a few questions while feeling secure. He's intrigued by Philip's fascination with Ares and asks whether the princess is the reason why Philip is willing to throw his life away so easily. According to Alfred, a soldier with low abilities shouldn't be entrusted with such a mission. Alfred points out that Philip is just one of the countless guys who falls for Princess Ares. In the end, the princess just uses them to satisfy her wishes and doesn't truly care about any of them. At this point, Philip must feel a fresh batch of adrenaline surging through his veins, as he reacts to Alfred's latest claims. He yells at Alfred to keep quiet and aims to attack him. Thankfully, Alfred stays alert and avoids the attack. Alfred continues with his tale, explaining that everyone who has had a thing for Princess Ares has met the same fate. By the time Ares graduated from school, she was already famous as the Witch of Decapitation. Alfred recalls when he asked her why she enjoys assassination more than other things. From Princess Ares' reply, it's safe to say that she enjoys manipulating people to get her desired results. That's what she sees as fun. Meanwhile, Philip refuses to believe any of these things. He insists that he wasn't manipulated and came here on his own accord. Seeing as there's nothing else he can do to convince Philip, Alfred decides to end the guard's suffering by using explosion that will certainly kill him. Even at the point of death, the last couple of things Philip sees have to do with Princess Ares and his desire to protect her. With his last breath, Philip pleads for Princess Ares to remain safe. Meanwhile, in the throne room, King Johannes and Princess Ares have no doubts about who released that current wave of explosive magic. They know that it almost certainly means that their guards have been defeated. King Johann asks if they truly had to send off Philip and Grog for the last mission. Princess Ares laughs it off, cold-heartedly saying that Philip and Grog have plenty of replacements and shouldn't be a bother. Meanwhile, back at the castle hall, Nito strikes his Benedict javelin through Alfred. Alfred is scared at first, but he becomes calm when he discovers that the aim is to speed up the recovery process of his magic power. Nito also does the same for Sieg and Eliza. Eliza wonders how Nito does this without using a magic crystal ball. So Nito explains that the magic is simply the mischievous reversal of Cursed Javelin. He acquired this Cursed Javelin after defeating Gordon. Now the traditional purpose of this weapon is to add magic deficiency ailment to a target. When one receives this ailment, one's magic power will be decreased. Using the mischievous reversal, however, you can easily get a Benedict javelin doing the reverse. Nito and his companions keep walking till they arrive at the throne room, the place where King Johannes most likely is. Eliza promises to support Nito in case something happens in the throne room. Meanwhile, Nito is lost in thoughts, wondering if he can use the mischievous reversal on his magic tools the same way he uses it on his regular magic. He decides to try it out and activates the effect on his staff. The result is obtaining Belphegor's Great Staff as a new magic tool. What's peculiar about the staff is the presence of a talking demon attached to the staff. He introduces himself to Nito as Belphegor and calls him Master. Okay, this should be fun. Nito and the others are yet to come to terms with the appearance of Belphegor, and from the looks of it, Belphegor doesn't completely love the idea of serving Nito either. In fact, in Belphegor's words, Nito looks weak as hell. When Eliza notes that the staff is talking, Belphegor even attempts to hit on her for a moment. Nito snaps out of his surprise and asks what kind of creature Belphegor is. The staff explains that he's Nito's half and exists to grant his desires. Nito is still a bit confused, but Alfred and Eliza recall reading something about this in a book. Nito and his companions decide to finish their mission by heading inside the throne room. Their path is blocked by the king's knights, people who have achieved mastery in both magic and swordsmanship. If anything, this is certainly proof that King Johannes is in the throne room. One of the knights casts his spells, and it only takes Eliza to counter it. As they acknowledge the power of the dragon heart, they decide to combine their magic powers and send them together. Nito steps up, intending to use his powers to blow them aside, while also bringing the throne room's door down. Sieg insists that Nito should let them handle this, as he knows that Nito's magic power might end up causing more destruction than intended. Together with Alfred and Eliza, Sieg summons a spell that not only repels the effects of the King's Knight's spells, but also brings them down along with the door. The throne room is now wide open, and Nito can see the people he's after, King Johannes and Princess Ares. However, their path is suddenly blocked by the rubble from the previous magic spell. As they wonder what they can do, Belphegor offers them a lifeline and clears the rubble using Black Ergo, which is like a big destructive bubble that swallows everything in its path. Nito and his companions enter the throne room. They announce that they're here to make King Johannes reap his rewards for the sin of conducting a hero summoning, along with Princess Ares and every other person involved. Sieg announces that they are all going to meet their end in that very throne room. Princess Ares laughs heartily at Sieg's words, claiming he has no proof they did a hero summoning, and that the dragon heart is simply performing an act of terrorism on their own accord. She reverses the threat, saying they won't leave the throne room safely. Just then, the subordinates in the throne room move to attack the Dragonheart, while Princess Aries activates Transfield and Transmethus, a high-speed teleport ability that makes it difficult to predict where she is at a point in time. As predicted, the Dragonheart has no answer to her latest antics, so it looks like she's gotten away once again. Meanwhile, Nito calmly asks his companions to take care of the rest while he goes after the princess. He activates Soil Break and catches the princess in her strides almost immediately. Princess Aries demands that Nito let her go immediately, but Nito reveals that he's waited for this day a long time. The day he gets to kill Aries with his bare hands. The hunger and thirst for revenge is the only clear thing about Nito currently. He wants to take his revenge on Princess Aries, but first, he wants her to know that the revenge seeking is completely personal, and not for any other reason. Meanwhile, Princess Aries has failed to recognize Nito so far. She wonders aloud who the strange but powerful man is. Nito throws her down and is ready to take his revenge slowly and painfully. He announces to Aries that even though she used to know him, the one she knew no longer exists. At that point, the magicians in the throne room turn their attention to Nito's fight with their princess. They order him to leave the princess alone immediately, but they're looking out for the wrong fight and almost immediately regret it. After sending explosions their way, Sieg encourages Nito to focus on the princess and the king, promising to deal with anything else that might come their way. Nito agrees and then uses Odium Aura to buff up their attacking and defensive powers, indirectly helping them in their battle. Eliza wonders how Nito just cast that magic spell from that distance and without magic circles. Sieg also wonders how impressive Nito's power is. He also points out Nito's blackish-red aura. Nito also seems to have a crimson-colored left eye now. Sieg wonders how much Nito has changed since the first time they met. While he admits that Nito looks and feels completely different from that time, he concludes that there's no use in thinking about it at the moment. With their buffed-up powers, the Dragonheart find defeating the subordinates easier than taking candy from a baby. Meanwhile, Nito makes Aries watch her comrades die and promises that she is next. At this point, King Johans decides to intervene. The king orders Nito to let go of his daughter. When he doesn't, King Johans decides to join the fight by activating Sand Javelin and aiming it at Nito. Nito activates Soil Break, breaking the javelin before he breaks a sweat. The king attempts another move and creates Rock Lance, but Nito destroys that even faster than the first. Both King Johans and Princess Aries are lost for words here. Aries exclaims that Nito destroyed the magic formula. Nito is impressed and gives her something else to figure out by activating Phantom Pain on the king. King Johans can't endure the pain and starts screaming. Aries finds it hard to watch her father being tortured, but Nito somehow finds it appropriate to explain at this point that he acquired Phantom Pain by activating Mischievous Reversal on Magic Bullet, a skill activated by one of the guards moments ago. Meanwhile, King Johans is still under Phantom Pain and is nearly at his limit. Aries cries out to her father, saying that he could be maimed if the torture continues beyond this point. Nito reveals that even maiming the king wouldn't be going too far. After all, the king and princess used to torture people to the point of maiming just to get them to perform the hero summoning. If anything, Nito remains very glad that he's about to wipe two evil people from the world, so there's no reason he should feel guilty. Princess Aries thinks about the best way to save her father. She realizes that Nito is distracted by torturing the king, so he might not realize if she sneaks up on him to stab him with her arm that's still intact. She makes the quiet journey and nearly makes it to Nito's location. Unfortunately for her, Nito notices that she's gone quiet for a little while, and feels that something might be up. He looks back and sees her advancing towards him, so he knocks her down again. Nito releases the king from Phantom Pain by using Effect Heal. The king has suddenly stopped feeling pain and is curious as to why. Nito makes it clear that he doesn't intend to let the king die just like that. First, King Johans must know the true meaning of suffering. Nito activates Phantom Pain again, and then activates Effect Heal a while later. He repeats this process a couple of times, and the king is now at his endurance limit. Aries cries and begs for her father, leading Nito to question why the most wicked people still have a soft spot for someone. Aries pleads for her father's life once again, saying that he's her only relative. This statement annoys Nito. He points out the hypocrisy in it by saying that a lot of the people she previously killed were probably the last relatives of someone else. He activates Diaz Bloodly, making blood drip from the ceiling and come in contact with the king. As he's tired of fighting for his life, the king looks at his daughter one last time before dropping dead. With the ceiling already destroyed, Nito asks Belphegor to remove the ceiling like he removed the rubble. The staff obeys him by once again activating Black Ergo. Meanwhile, Aries, who has been a first-hand viewer of Nito's magical might, wonders how he's done all these things that were previously unheard of. The princess also wonders why such a talented magician has stayed under the radar up until this point. She voices her frustrations and demands to know why he's particular about torturing them so painfully, when he could have easily just killed them immediately. Nito decides to explain to her. He explains to her how he just wanted to be a regular magician like the rest, but when that did not happen and he became a healer, she cast him out just because of his occupation. Nito's story finally rings a bell in the princess's head, but she doesn't believe that he's still alive. However, she tries to plead her case by pointing out that she teleported Nito back then instead of simply killing him. But Nito is fully aware of the intent behind the teleportation. He makes it clear to Ares that she's the reason he's now obtained the power for revenge. Just then, Princess Ares calls out his name, Hidaka Masamune. Nito makes it clear to Ares that she lost the battle because she was certain she had disposed of him. Then again, he's surprised she remembers his name. He whispers the one thing that he's learned about people in this world is that everyone treats healers like trash. Ares, while still in pain, says that he's a different kind of healer. Nito insists that she wouldn't understand the root of his power even if he sat down to explain it to her. Once again, Nito brings up his banishment from the country just for being a common healer. The princess is desperate at this point, so Ares suggests that it's not too late for Nito to join his friends and become a great magician. Nito has died once in his other world, but these guys intervened and brought him to this world, only to pair him with people he doesn't wish to see and treat him like garbage again. He announces that there is no way he would get along with her or the other people she just referred to as his friends. Meanwhile, Sieg notifies Nito of their mission completion. All that remains is for him to finish off the princess, and he says he plans to do it quickly now. He asks for the well-being of his classmates, particularly the nice Saiki and Ichijo, who is always a character. Ares tells him that they're doing excellently. Nito asks what would happen if the reverse was the case, and whether she would have performed another summoning. While talking, Nito activates Soul Break, which gets rid of the teleportation circle the princess has been quietly working on. He explains to Sieg that he's fully aware that she's capable of making her teleportation circle transparent. According to him, he could tell that she was plotting something from the look in her eyes. And it doesn't come as a surprise. She's always prioritized her safety over everyone else's. Nito activates Phantom Pain and Effect Heal for Ares, just like he did for her father moments ago. He makes it clear that she disgusts him so much that he might accidentally kill her. He takes off her right arm with his weapon and she can't even scream any longer. He takes off the left one along with it, and then activates the heal powers of a healer to stop the blood flow. By doing this, he mocks her, helping her with the same powers she previously discarded. She still insists that he's special because he's not a regular kind of healer, so he takes off her legs next, leaving her fully amputated. Even at that, Ares still shamelessly begs for her life. Nito asks whether she's willing to live the rest of her life without arms and legs. He ignores her endless pleas from that moment on, and he ends her life by crushing her head with his foot. And now King Johans and Princess Ares are dead. Revenge has been obtained. Meanwhile, Nito can tell that his Dragonheart companions have been watching from behind. He confesses to them, saying that his latest victims were killed because of personal grudges and nothing else. He admits to having no sense of justice, unlike the rest of them, so he says he completely understands if they withdraw their invitation for him to join the organization. Sieg makes it clear that the Dragonheart organization isn't particularly obsessed with justice. If they were, they would have put everyone through the process of trials before killing them. If they followed the process of justice, Sieg says it would have taken a lot more time to bring Ares and the others to real justice, which probably means more sacrifices would have been made. Sieg says that since Nito has had a lot of time to think and still chose to go ahead, his act must have been necessary. Nito knows it's necessary, but he still feels like something is missing. Alfred talks about the horrible treatment that he suffered under Ares, including the death of his mother. So he says he has no regrets about her death, but he feels a sense of guilt and suggests that Nito might feel the same. Nito decides to just let the question be. He tells them to contact him if something comes up, which should naturally mean that he's agreed to join their organization. However, Nito insists that he's not giving a yes or a no at this point. They are ready to leave the castle and teleport to Mira's Inn from there. However, Nito stares keenly at the castle like he still has something in mind. He remembers his promise to erase the country alongside Ares, so he wonders if he can fulfill that promise by just destroying the castle, the symbol of the king's power. Sieg approves, saying destroying the castle might even prevent heroes from being summoned in the future. Nito asks Bell to do the task, erasing the castle and the castle grounds. Bell activates Black Ergo one last time, and this one turns out bigger than the others combined. The destructive abyss even grows past the castle and starts to leave the castle grounds, leading to concerns from Nito and the others. Bell makes it clear that he's Nito's half, and is simply following Nito's innate desires. He says no one will be destroyed unless Nito wants them to be. As Bell said, it's over in a matter of minutes. The castle is gone, and the citizens around remain. On this day, Nito and the Dragonheart destroyed Grey Belka.